Cool. So this is Chris Atala with Found in Fanslation. I'm back after like a 4 year hiatus, and I was able to score a Neo Geo CD about like, a month ago because I was been wanting to play Samurai Shodown RPG since I read about it in GameFan in the mid '90s, and also coincidentally, I became a huge East fan just in the last couple of years, where I was able to get a Turbo Graphics, and I was really happy to learn that an awesome guy who's worked on both the E series in official and fan capacity, and also translated the Samurai Shodown RPG, is a active guy on Twitter and now Blue Sky, which I'm happily enjoying as well. So yeah, Jeff, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and you know, uh, yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, I mean, that was a pretty solid introduction. I feel like, properly glazed. Um, but yeah, my name's Jeff, Jeff Nussbaum. I've done a lot of work in in fan circles, mostly on the East series, translating those. Done a few official translations for XSEED. I did several East games. I did a very large chunk of the original Trails in the Sky first chapter. That's the story. I also did Senran Kagura Burst on the 3DS for them. If you recall, when E08 happened, the first pass at a translation was not well received.
I've heard that.
So, uh, and so at considerable expense, to their credit, the head of the company was like, "All right, we're redoing this." And that's when they reached out to me and called me in to kind of consult on the do-over. Like, let's make sure we're getting this, like we're that this is, staying in true to the established canon and stuff that's out there. And then when they did East 9, they called me back in to do some, continuity, consulting just to make sure terminology matched up and all that. And and actually, East 10 is the first game in quite a while that I've had absolutely no involvement with, like whatsoever. I might get I might get a special thanks in the credits. I haven't finished the game yet. Um, but yeah, and so like that's been, but on the fan side, I translated East 1 and 2 Chronicles, East the Oath and Felghana, which is East 3. I've translated East 4 Mask of the Sun for Super Famicom. Um, and I did a good chunk of work on East 4, The Dawn of East for PC Engine, and East 5 for Super Famicom. Like the lost, the lost stepchild that, is seems doomed to never see the light of day in the West. But yeah, and then I think my days of working in fan translation circles, unless I can, unless there's like a couple of very specific games that if the opportunity arose, like I would work on those. But Samurai Showdown RPG was like kind of a personal bugbear of mine for the longest time. Like the project says sat over my head for 16 years, up until I finally got released last November. And
Why on your head specifically? Why do you say that?
well, because I mean, that's how long I've had the project.
So you
Like
were kind
when
of the lead, kind of that whole time, like leading the way through.
Well, essentially what happened, with Samurai Showdown, like I've been a fan of the Samurai Showdown series since it's the first time I ever saw it. It was like one of those where you know, you go up and you play a game for the first time and you just get this like, ooh, this one's special. And Samurai Showdown was very much that for me. And as might be able to tell by some of the stuff in the background here, I've got like an obnoxiously priced ukiyo figure over there in the corner. Um, but so like I've followed the series for ages, and but I was I said in the fan translation circles, like I would love to be able to work on Samurai Shodown RPG. And I believe you're familiar with Gideon G of
Oh
Eon
yeah.
Genesis. Good dude.
Yeah, I
Um,
bugged him about lady soccer sitting right up over here,
oh,
and I
okay,
was like,
yeah,
"Hey man, I'd love to help if you're." He's like, "No, I'm working on it. But I don't know, can't say when, but I'm working on it."
yeah. But like on the Eon Genesis website, he had a little forum there, and every once in a while, a guy who just came in as a guest would show up, and he would just offer up these just wild insights into the technical side of hacking a game and everything.
And what
And
what year about was this then?
this would have been
Like early
2006
2000.
or 7, I
Okay.
want to say. But anyway, one day this guy just pops. I mean, like who this person is has been the subject of speculation for ages. I mean, like that there's some who think some people think it is just Gideon. Like he's basically I've made this tool and but I don't want to work on this game. And like it could be. I have no idea. That's not me forwarding that theory. I just think that is a thing I heard. I'm like, I don't think that's true. Knowing him as he's a he was a busy dude, like a really 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 busy dude, even back then.
Hmm.
But anyway, this person popped up onto the forums and said like he put up a custom build of what's the tool Atlas, which is a utility for dumping and reinserting text from game data, and he kind of gave some basic instructions and said, you know, whoever wants to mess with this, go to town.
It was not platform specific.
It was specifically Neo Geo CD.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Like there's like well because like the Saturn and I mean even then like the PlayStation was a reasonably well understood platform. Nothing like now, obviously, and the Saturn to a less. I think there may have been a couple of fan translations out at that point, but there was nothing on the Neo Geo CD. Like there was very little understood about like the inner workings of the system, like as far as like translation side goes, and a lot of that's because most like 99% of Neo Geo games have multiple languages built into them,
Oh, okay.
and so like it's and the way that the system works in most cases is that the region of the game you're playing is specific to the console. There's just like a little switch, and so like if this jumper is closed, like on the Neo Geo CD, it actually is just like a little junction, little jumper wire. If it's set to 1, it's a U.S. system. If it's set to 2, it's a European system. If there's not set at all, it's Japanese or something very similar to that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I
Um,
fired up Crossword 2 as the first thing that I put in my system, and then it
yeah,
was in Japanese, which I'm
yeah,
studying
because you
Japanese, and it was fine. But then I found out,
yeah
oh, wow, I can just play it in English by like a jumper. Like, that's really
yeah.
cool.
But yeah, but there's a handful of Neo Geo CD games that are like one language only. And Samurai Shodown RPG was one of them. Of course, it was a big thing where people were just like, oh, I want to play this game. I want to play this game. And just be like this, deep insight into the Samurai Shodown, series and lore and characters and everything.
Hmm.
But but anyway, the guest came in and he, put those tools up and he said, have fun. And there was no table. If you're not familiar with that, a table is basically just in ROM hacking terms, a table is essentially just an exchange that says you see this byte that equals this character, this letter, this or this combination of characters or whatever.
Kind of like a
Um,
Rosetta Stone, kind of.
and
Is that a
kind
good
of,
thing?
yeah. And it's normally finding and building a table for a game is not generally that big a deal because if you're dealing with older games like the NES and Super Nintendo, um, Genesis and stuff like that, you generally weren't dealing with that many characters. You had like hiragana, katakana, maybe a couple hundred kanji. Samurai Showdown's table is almost 3,000 characters long.
Hmm.
It was known as like, it's one thing that you can tell, just one of those little things you can tell the intended audience of a game in Japanese by how much kanji there is.
I never
You
thought
know,
about that.
yeah, like if something and Samurai Shodown RPG is absolutely riddled with kanji. Like even all the menus are like you look at like you go to the menu screen like there's 5 options across the top, they're all in kanji.
Hmm.
There's no, there's very, very little. It's one of the most aggressively import unfriendly games I've ever seen.
Wow.
Um, So I had to figure out the table on my own. And so
Jesus.
like yeah, it was but I was like, all right, I had to, fiddle around with the Neo Geo, and that was like one specific build of the Neo CD SDL emulator that was around at the time, that showed you which files it was loading off the disk. And so I did just a bunch of like just detective work, and I found the early like what's the earliest place that I can get to and have this, and adjust text to fiddle around with it and just kind of get a feel for the way that the game works. Um, and as it turns out, if you played as Ukyo, there's like the first thing that happens is the screen fades in, and he just goes and he talks to this one dude. Um, and so I just said like, all right, well I know where like I know where the table starts, like what the hex what the values are for each thing. So um I just set it to like, all right, we'll just play this character, then the next character, the next character, and it just filled up, with line after line after line of, just all these different kanji. And there's a lot of um, there's some fairly archaic stuff in there. A lot of it that I did not know, would not recognize. And so I spent about about 6 weeks just figuring out the table. And yeah, like so, like I found out. All right, I got every single character, and basically what I did, I got it to because you could only display 32, like 16 characters on 2 lines. And so
Mhm.
I just like, all right, just show me the next 16, or the next 32 characters. Then and go to the next line, show me the next 32 after that. And I just took screenshots, and then I went on to www.jadic, the that online Japanese like kanji dictionary,
Oh, cool. I
and
never used that.
they have like a multi-radical thing where you can just you click off. It's like, all right, this stroke, this this radical, that radical, and you like show me all the kanji that match this. And I was just like, all right, I had to kind of just,
Wow.
and I did that for a couple thousand kanji. I mean, there's a lot of them that I knew and I could recognize offhand. Of course, nowadays you could just do this and be like, all right, I take that same step and just do like Google Translate, transcribe, like voila. Um, and just for the hell of it, I was just like, how easy would this have been with modern tools? And yeah, like that 6 weeks that I spent, I could have done it in an not in an afternoon, but like in a couple of days, I could have done all that work. Um,
Yeah. Wow.
uh, so, and then like from there, it just all right. Once I found all that, all right, now I can properly dump the script. Because like it dumped the script, but it just showed like just a bunch of hex code. Nothing that actually corresponded to anything that you could actually interpret. But
Yeah.
once I got that figured out, then I was able to get a proper script dump, and then I spent several months after that, just working on the translation. And like I was working the job I had at the time, it allowed for like essentially like if I wasn't, like I was working in like a call center customer service at the time, but if I wasn't on a call, nobody cared what I was doing as long as I was available. So I just worked on doing the translation stuff.
It's awesome.
While I was idle at work. And the script didn't really take that long because it's not that like the ironic thing about having all that kanji, it makes it easier to understand the language if you know what the kanji is saying, because you don't have to guess it like, oh, is it, because Japanese is loaded with homophones. So like this word sounds like this word, and like wait, like so you have to think about the context of like which of these words do they mean. um, but if you know the kanji, then it's just well, it very definitely means this. And that's the ironic thing is like if you have a greater command of kanji, the written language it becomes easier to understand than the spoken.
Yeah. I study like super like long like I had to teach someone from competitive fighting games. I he hosted like the most famous like Japanese player in the world. We brought into like our event and
Mhm.
everything, and he translated for him. And it kind of like I knew he was like into language and everything, but I didn't know to like that extent. So he was
Mhm.
like we had him be his personal translator as a player. So then I went to Japan and then I came back and then I hired him to. He started his own tutoring business and
Yeah,
he
okay.
ended up being like a YouTube like million subscriber, like did like really well for himself and everything. So I was lucky that I was able to have personal lessons from him for about a year, and
Mm.
he like passed away like 3 or 4 years ago, which like
Oh
really
no.
was like terrible. And in my own kind of way, I felt like, man, like I learned a lot from
Mm.
Moses. It's almost like disrespectful of me to not have followed up on like all this personal like one-on-one. And he was like an amazing teacher, and he was a polyglot. He could
Oh yeah.
he yeah he taught like dozens and dozens of languages.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, Lao Shu 50 500. He was like a big YouTube guy and everything.
Okay.
So I found this site called WaniKani, and it's like
Oh
$9 a
yeah.
month or something. Okay, yeah, so you've heard of it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm familiar. I don't know much about it, but the name is definitely one I recognize.
Yeah, and it's fun to like kanji was I stopped doing Japanese with him because I was like, oh man, like I'm really I didn't believe I was ever going to be able to learn kanji.
Mm.
I really loved how Moses could like break down language, and I loved learning with him, and he gets you speaking like right away, and also writing. But I was like, I'll never be able to learn kanji. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
you
like
will.
so my I don't like speak it. I just do it like in my free time, like on the
Mm.
computer, like doing like vocabulary basically. But
Right.
it's so like it's yeah, it's just like so helpful to like for because really I just want it for like video games, like
Mm.
honestly, and like oh of course also take my wife to Japan, eventually hopefully, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and yeah, my spoken, I like listening is comprehension is horrible,
Mm.
but yeah, it's like I finally understand like like how to learn kanji and
Mm.
why it's so important to the language, and it's I feel like
Yeah.
it's going to be really helpful as I continue like on this
Mm.
fan translation kind of journey.
Oh, absolutely. It's it is like it's daunting if if you when you don't know it,
Yeah,
but once you learn it, you're just like this makes the language so much more straightforward.
yeah. And I was
But
like
that,
amazed, like Wanikani basically uses like mnemonic devices and like
mm,
things like that. And I like legitimately shocked myself that I can remember,
yeah,
and
yeah, you get that light bulb and you're like, holy shit, I understand this. This is so cool. Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
Um,
That is a very special moment when you just start picking up, realizing that you're like, I know this.
yeah,
Like I understand this. This is not something I'm having to like rack my brain and to get.
yeah,
And yeah, that is a very special moment, and that's awesome. I love hearing about stuff
yeah.
like
So it's
that.
like I'm at like 500,
Mm,
and that's like Jesus, like to do a project like this where it's like thousands of
oh
like
yeah,
obscure, and like you having to do all that yourself.
yeah.
You
I
weren't
mean,
able to get any like, well, we didn't. I really wanted to ask about like how you first, got proficient with the language.
yeah. Well, I spent my 90s, or my 90s, the 90s. I'm not that old. Um, I spent the 90s like I was introduced to anime. Like I'd encountered anime like a lot of people in my age group. Like I'm 50, born in 1974. So like there was a few things that popped up here and there throughout the 80s, like Battle of the Planets, or Robotech and things like that, or Akira. Um, but it wasn't until I saw it was like 19 because I remember the very first one came out in 1987, but I don't think any of it really kind of trickled over, at least not to where I was. I was spent the first several decades of my life in South Carolina, um, but none of it had trickled there until like a year or two later. But it was Bubblegum Crisis,
Okay. I don't know
and
anything. If you want to tell me a little about bubblegum, I really like know almost nothing about anime
oh
actually
okay.
too. So
Bubblegum Crisis is essentially um, a very like Japanese 80s style take on Blade Runner meets Terminator.
oh, that sounds awesome.
I mean, it honestly is it's pretty cool. But it is kind of funny. It's a little hard to recommend now just because of the way that the language has changed over the years. Because essentially these uh, semi-organic robots are being manufactured by this megacorp called Genom, but it's supposed to be genome.
Oh,
But it's and like I never didn't make that connection for years. It's still like it's a genome, and I was like, oh, genome. Ah, I get it. Um, but like these robots were like hiding and they would take on human form and everything. Um, and oh, and I got just as a quick aside, in the first episode, because it was an OVA series, like all the direct to video stuff that they did. And it also had really, really good music, like these vocal, rock vocals and everything. And there was this song that was in the first one called Konya wa Hurricane. Konya, like, Konya, it means like this evening. Like there's a hurricane tonight. And it was like this really cool song. And like I finally sat down to watch that Scott Pilgrim Netflix series a
oh
couple
yeah.
weeks ago. And like and one of the episodes, like toward the end, they play that song, and I'm sitting here like, what the heck? Because it's such a randomly and like very specific reference. I'm like, all right, I'm in love. This is amazing. but but anyway, um, but like I discovered that there was another one that I really got into, Ixer 1. And that's like, and also where I discovered the East, like those I discovered East right around the same time. Um, and I got in like, and I used to have the entire East anime on Laserdisc.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, really?
Oh, yeah. People, yeah, just people think like, oh, and anime is so expensive. Like, you have no idea how good you have it. I used to pay 5,800 yen per 30-minute episode
Ooh,
of the 4 episode East 2 anime.
wow.
Unsubtitled. This is like the Japanese Laserdisc. So there were no subtitles there. There weren't even Japanese subtitles. Um,
Really? Jeez.
yeah, like what's I don't it's been a minute, but I don't think Laserdisc had really great support for that kind of stuff. But
Wow.
anyway,
You think that'd be like the most obvious thing
you
to
would
like
think.
the graphics?
But when you bear in mind, Laserdisc as a technology dates back to like 1978 or something like that. It had been around for a while. But anyway, like so, like I got into anime, and so I was just like, and a lot of it was unsubtitled, or like you would
Hmm.
have these, just terrible, terrible copies of like fourth, fifth, sixth generation VHS copies, and it's like that VHS horror vibe that people are all about these days, like you know. The real VHS horror is trying to watch something that is like a fourth or fifth generation copy of something, and it's just like, is that a B or a D in that word? I can't tell.
Oh, oh
Um,
my God. Yeah.
but anyway, like I got tired of wanting to, of like not understanding what I was watching, and like I was just kind of picking up bits and pieces of it here and there. Like I would learn, the pretty much the first word any aspiring weeb like learns is nani, you and but so like, and I got a book and I started teaching myself the language. I never had any formal training or anything, but like it was you know kind of admirable that I was so devoted to it, but that is like about the worst possible way you can learn Japanese is from anime, because they like one well a conversational Japanese does not sound like dramatic Japanese at all.
How so?
Well, the thing is, like scripted Japanese, like what you hear in your average television show, or movie or whatever, it's slowed down, and it's everything. There's a lot more emphasis, because like Japanese is not a stressed syllable language. It's timed syllables. You don't stress things like when you want to make a point, like we do in English. Like there's everything is like it's a fairly flat flat intonation of these words, but each syllable is like is it's meant to be held for the same amount of time. Nan desu ka kore wa? Nan desu ka kore? Like you don't say that. That's just not a thing that people do in Japanese. But yeah, you'll pick up. But like, and the thing about Japanese is that it's very much not about how you say it; it's what you say. It is how you form a sentence. It's how you construct. It's your choice of words it is the verb conjugation that you use. It's the honorifics that you use that determine, because like most swears, quote unquote, in Japanese are usually just variants of the word you. And like words, and in most cases, they used to be respectful. Like the common one is kisama. That literally just means you. It used to be a very
Oh,
respectful way to refer to someone. But it's not anymore. It's like it's that is something where like it will get used very often as like an interjection. They say it's like oh, kisama! And but they
oh,
and like to the point where it often gets translated as like you bitch or you bastard, depending on like whatever the context is.
oh wow.
Or like honore is like another word. It's like it's a it's like it also means you, but it's like it's more often seen these days in like shonen type anime. Honore and usually translates to like in context like damn, or words like that. But yeah, like I would and I probably the single most damaging thing I did to my Japanese studies was becoming completely obsessed with Ranma One Half.
Uh-huh. How come?
I was because Ranma is not someone you want to emulate. Like that is not a person whose speech patterns you want to emulate. And I will not relate the story of the Japanese restaurant when I was like, well, I'm never coming here again. Like I've embarrassed myself irrevocably. I just need to go and like just like I like if I had someone here to chop off my head, I would cut open my belly. It's like it was that bad.
Is he just
Um,
like a very disrespectful to
I
everybody kind of
yeah.
character?
I mean, well, it's like the another word again means it means you, omae. It is like literally it's the on like there's the o syllable at the beginning, which normally indicates like added respect. It's like you put a little respect on that name. Mai means front, forward.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Omae, yeah, like, omae means you. It's a not very polite way of saying you.
Huh.
Um, but like if you want to make it even lazier and less respectful, you would say like Ranma does. You would say ome, and it's like and like you say like ome wa, and like it's just like oh you don't like how dare you speak to, and those and actually my friend Chris related to me one time. He just kind of slipped and he was leaving one of his classes. And the professor, the sensei, wished him well. I said, "Omae mo," which like you too. And he caught himself, "Sensei mo," like you basically like you don't use that word to your, like to your sensei. And so, but yeah, like so I picked up all these terrible linguistic habits that took me years to unlearn, and I never fully did it. It's like I haven't really kept up with my Japanese studies in quite a while. Like the script for Samurai Shodown RPG was done years and years and years ago. At least like as the like the top, start to finish, it's it is in English. It's not ready for prime time, but it is in English. Um, but yeah, like it's like I got really just like I spent I like that was my weeaboo phase. I just got completely I like, completely checked out of American entertainment. I didn't listen to American music. I was basically it was like it was all game soundtracks and anime.
Yeah.
And I
That
still mostly
immersion. There you go.
yeah I still mostly listen to game soundtracks.
Yeah, I do too.
There's some great stuff out there. Um, but yeah, like I basically was like that went on for like about 15 years, and the last anime that I ever like really enjoyed and got into was Gungrave,
Hmm.
and that was 2002. Um, but yeah, but yeah, that was also when I discovered the Neo Geo. It's when I discovered Ys, and actually it was funny because like both of the Ys and the Neo Geo were both discovered because I walked into one store.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was this place called Power Up that was they dealt with they rented import systems
Oh my God, really?
in 1990.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So like they had they had TurboGrafx they had the TurboGrafx CD to rent. They
Wow.
had Neo Geos to rent.
Holy crap.
They had the Super Famicom before the Super Nintendo came out. Like I got to play, ActRaiser was, and I was just like, I remember seeing like Final Fantasy 4 or Final Fantasy 2, hearing the intro from or hearing like the first stage of ActRaiser. I'm like, how does it sound like this? This is amazing. And so yeah, it just but like but from there I rented the TurboGrafx CD with East Book 1 and 2, spent an entire weekend playing it, and I was like that was one obsession born. And then I also, the same thing. I rented the Neo Geo from there, and that, was the birth of another obsession. I'm like, literally, that is like just one of those random decisions that completely altered the course of my life. Like if I'd never walked in there, I would have a very different life than I do now.
Yeah. Do you remember how much they were to rent both of those?
Gee. God, it's, I mean, that's like 25 years ago at this point. Or sorry, like 35 years ago. Jesus, I'm old. It's like, how can it, it's like, how can it be 2024 when 2007 was only 2 years ago? That kind that kind of thought.
Yeah. Kids age you very differently, as I found the last 5 years. And I'm in just like everything's like a time vortex, and
yeah, and the older you get, the faster it seems to go.
Yeah,
exactly. I have plenty of hypotheses about that, but that's another discussion. But yeah, but
it was Japanese then, so you had to play East and Jet. I apologize in advance.
It was the US version.
Oh really? Oh okay.
Yeah,
it
was like cool. Because they didn't have they didn't have PC Engine stuff. They had PC Engine games. They had PC Engine CD games that you could rent, because those you could play with, because they were back then, consoles and stuff. They didn't, CD systems didn't have, copy protection, because it was just like, all right, this is still such a new thing that we're doing. It's all so experimental that you could just, copy stuff and it would just work.
It was the good old days.
Oh yeah.
I was lucky. My uncle had a 1X CD burner for his job in like '91. So it was my grandpa's brother, so like my older uncle. So it's like, it was great. We'd go over there and like, be basically like, have like some pop and like chill out, because it takes, an hour, 40 minutes to burn a disc. But it was like, it was just awesome.
Oh yeah. And I remember like when, like, I remember one of those, like, I was always kind of fascinated by video game music. And just like that, the whole concept of just like the way that, making these electronic things, these bleeps and bloops and stuff, turning them into music. So like, the advent of the CD-ROM system, like playing East 1 and 2, I was just like, jaw was on the floor hearing, and not to mention like hearing voices that I recognize, like Michael Bell and with Alan Oppenheimer, and it's like these, big voices of the day that you could recognize from, like, yeah, that's Duke, that, from G.I. Joe or whatever.
I didn't know that they use like, the acting is so good, for one and two, but I didn't know they were like known.
That was like some names are like Debbie Derryberry, but like the one like, it's kind of funny because they had them in to do like, one line or something, because like Michael Bell plays Dark Fact in East,
really?
Yeah, and like, and who Michael Bell is, he's like, he's Raziel. And like, like from the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, yeah, and so like you hear that, it's like, knave, prepare to die, and it's like, like, I know that guy, I know that voice, and it just let this, that just, you had some skilled voice actors, and so like, wow, that actually elevated everything, but also hearing names that you recognize from the TV also lent it this air of like legitimacy. So I was just like, East 1 and 2 was just like this mind-blowing experience for me. I loved that game to absolute death.
Yeah, I so wish I could have played them when they were new. I just like, I feel to say I'm really lucky that I played Lunar when I did, like a couple of years after the Sega CD came out, when I could get one like used, and I had a little bit more money of like my own in junior high. But I didn't know anyone who had a TurboGrafx, and you could even just like, East is one of like those games, and I call it Yeast with the Y. I know it's East, but I just like do that like by accident, like all the time. It's like one of those games, even just like for this like logo, you could always just tell like some games are special, and I could always just tell like East was special,
Yeah.
and I only got to play it myself like 7 years ago when I got a PC CD a duo
Okay.
on because like one of the last frontiers for me were like Neo Geo and like PC
Right.
Engine, and yeah, I mean it had I felt like almost as strongly about it playing it, like as like an adult and everything as I feel like I would have as a
Hmm.
kid. And I love that about old games where you have to have so much of your imagination to, but it envelops me in like the world even more. I feel like even more a part of these old games that are just like like tiny little stick figures and everything,
Hmm.
but it's just that atmosphere that they create, and especially East 1 and 2 with like that incredible use of
Yeah.
music and like yeah, like the skilled voice acting. Yeah, it's an awesome game. I try to get people to like go back and play it. I know people probably aren't going to mess with like the TurboGrafx version when you can play
Yeah.
Chronicles, which you've also worked on and everything, which
Yeah.
is great. But I wish people would you know go back
Yeah.
and experience the original
Yeah. Well,
versions.
fun fact about me, I grew up wanting to be a makeup effects artist in Hollywood.
Oh, cool.
Like I was a huge horror buff as a kid. I wanted to be the person who made the monsters. I wanted to make I wanted to make all the blood effects and all that kind of stuff. I know how to do some stuff like like old school like squibs, like fill up a condom with like the your stage blood and you tape it over the little explosive and you set the explosive and stuff like that. I know how to do that sort of stuff.
Oh, that's sweet.
Um, but didn't that was not a career that worked out for me because it turned out I have absolutely no aptitude for sculpting. Um, and you kind
Oh,
of need that. But I only bring that up just as you were talking about those older games and everything, and it's the in the days before CG, and especially before CG became sort of this catch-all answer for for any kind of visual trickery you could use for a movie. It's like someone made the point like every single like you watch a movie like the original Star Wars or like Poltergeist or Friday the 13th or Aliens or all that stuff. Like every single effect you see on screen is a bespoke magic trick. Like and there's just something about you see the kind of effort like the thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing. And like when you see some of the behind the scenes stuff or the interviews and everything, you would see these people talking about this. Like they had to go through so much work to kind of like the doing the thing with like the kanji table. Like they having the technology to do it now, it would have taken, no time at all. But like when you see that, it's just like I'm so like I've always had a thing for the behind the scenes stuff and seeing just how they would make the magic happen. Like the and so like there's still part of me that I have a lot of respect and appreciation for like the low tech, in games as well, because they had to, they had to suggest a lot more. They couldn't just slap it up on screen and there you go, just have a look at it. Like no, we had to suggest and and intimate that this was this massive world that you were looking at. So like those
yeah,
old style, like the old school PC Engine CD and Mega CD cutscenes and stuff that they would do, and
yeah.
like
I
the
love
way
that
that they,
style.
yeah, I love it. I like that low res pixel art anime, and which pretty much died off entirely with the advent of the PlayStation because they could do full motion video.
I know. I think like
Um,
I still like I just bought this. I just read about this like in Hardcore Gaming 101. It was like
oh,
oh
let's say after that, yeah.
it's a GameWorks. I was like it's a GameWorks game, which I love Lunar and like
Mm,
Grandia, and I love that style of like the East cutscenes and like
mm,
Lunar with just like like a kind of moving sprite. It's just like I'm so
right.
fascinated by the technology, and honestly like FMV is like it's kind of like boring to me because then it was just like oh it's just like a card. There's no like you said like trickery.
There's no
There's no
technical
like
trickery to make
technical
it
yeah.
happen. It's
Um,
just I mean like and I don't want it like and I don't want to downplay like I don't want to say it's just anime. Like no, I mean like it still requires a lot of manual labor, but
yeah,
it is missing a certain something that I personally found value in it. Um, so, but I mean, but it's that sort of dedication and trickery and stuff just got moved to other parts of of making games. But it is but it is had that there's the modern thing nowadays where you can just like engines are now so powerful that you can have like rinky-dink little indie games that look better than anything that could have come out on the like on consoles or a few generations ago. Like that, what's that game? Uh, Tormented Souls, I think it is. It's like this Resident Evil knockoff. But it's like it's all 3D. It looks, it basically looks like you remember you seeing the Resident Evil 1 remake and just being
Oh
like,
yeah, oh my
holy
God.
crap, this game looks amazing. But it's like it looks that essentially a lot like that, only in real time.
Mm,
And honestly, probably visually just better. It has more bells and whistles, better lighting, that kind of stuff. But like
mm,
that's just a little indie game. And like now there's just like these bespoke game engines and that are just made specifically for the sake of just kind of helping people get past all these obstacles that used to exist. And which is great. And I love like I think it's cool that games have been like democratized in that way. But there is still that part of me is just like I still kind of miss those days when it just it took all of your little all the trickery your programming trickery that you could muster to get this effect to work and just made every like any given moment could feel special if it hit you just the right way.
yeah.
Um,
That kind of reminds me of so with East 4, which we didn't get in America,
mm,
and like no one bought a TurboGrafx as it was, but it's like at least they could have, like, I'm sure that it was, the system was like deader than dead when like 4 came out in Japan
mm.
and all that. I was like really interested when I played it for the first time and I read about it a little bit that they couldn't really. So it seems like the subtitling so many of the scenes where it's just like a giant East 4 has, like, if you haven't like played the game, it doesn't just have like these Sega CD and like TurboGrafx CD cutscenes with like moving sprites. It has a lot of scenes where it's just like the overworld, but then it's like a giant face covering half the screen and talking.
Mm.
And I guess it was like a big technical. It was like it was too much to add subtitles right to that, so they had to like totally dub. I was wondering if you like were involved with that, or like how the technical side of that even
Well,
specifically worked.
um, I don't know a ton about like the coding side of it as far as the TurboGrafx went. I know that it was there was never a chance that they were only going to be subtitled.
Hmm.
Even if it had been technically feasible for them to do so, like that was just not a thing where like look because there's like to this day there's still a stigma about subtitled movies. Like if you're watching it, like I don't want to watch something that's not in English. So like it was just thought like the games have to be dubbed in English or else they just won't sell. And to their credit, they were probably right. Um, but like for the earlier TurboGrafx CD games, most of the time they're the music and the voiceover stuff like Eastbook 1 and 2 almost not everything, but almost all of the voiceover stuff is done as part of Red Book Audio. Meaning like it's the like when I say Red Book Audio, if you're like, you probably are familiar, but for any of the
Yeah,
viewers who
people
might
probably
not
don't
be,
know that
yeah,
term anymore. Yeah, it's like I'm getting
it's
old.
Red Book Audio is specifically refers to like you pop a CD in the CD player, you press play, you hear music or whatever is recorded on it. That's Red Book Audio, as opposed to the other types of audio, which would be like the kind that gets compressed and then played back by the computer or the system so like that's the equivalent of like compressed streamed digital voices like you see in basically every system from the PlayStation onward. And actually, I was going to mention that when because I was so for the longest time I was so used to game audio music being on Red Book Audio. It's like, hey, and a lot of the early PlayStation games still had Red Book Audio. Like you could take your copy of Battle Arena Toshinden, pop it in your CD player, and listen to the music. And I remember the first game that I ever noticed that what's called ADPCM, which is which is that compressed stream, like basically kind of like an MP3 or something, where it's just streaming it off the disc, was Symphony of the Night,
Oh
Castlevania
yeah,
Symphony of the
yeah.
Night. And I remember like, God, this music is amazing. Like, and I figured like, well, if it's not being played by the system, like like Super Nintendo music was, or like Final Fantasy, 7, 8, 9, and even Final Fantasy 10, 11 and 12 still did the same thing where it was just
I know
basically
that.
like yeah, like 10, 11 and 12, like if you ever look at those those the USF or NSF, those music formats that were just like the ripped audio from game files. You could just play them in your Winamp with the right plugin.
Yeah,
But
Winamp.
PlayStation 2 still had that functionality, and still a lot of
Oh,
games still used it. And I mean the primary reason for that is because it just saves a ton of space. Because Redbook audio is any with it's uncompressed, and like uncompressed anything like uncompressed audio and visual and video is like the most space hungry thing you can do. Um, but so like doing, but like so going back to Castlevania, hearing the music in that, and I was like, this sounds amazing. How are they getting those rich, these amazing voices and all these rich strings and the violins and the horns and drums and all this other stuff?
yeah, without
And
Red Book.
but it wasn't Redbook.
Yeah.
And so I popped the CD and and you get that notification. This is a PlayStation Black Disc. This disc contains computer data. Blah blah blah. It's like but you're probably not going to listen to me anyway, are you? And then he plays that just weird random remix of another Castlevania song, and I was like, how the hell did they
Yeah.
do this? And so like that just kind of sent me on this quest to learn, and so I just kind of learned about this whole side of like 80 PCM audio, and I was like, this changes everything, and honestly, it kind of did,
Oh, that's cool.
because that's just how games are done these days. I mean, like the technology got better, and they got to where they could do like multiple simultaneous streams, and they would just like switch back and forth dynamically between one or the other. That's like if you look at the Metal Gear Solid games, like the Metal Gear
Oh
Solid
yeah.
2, like you have like the doom, 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 and then then someone's like, whose footprints are these? And then the music would kick up a little bit. It's like, okay, we just switched over to like the tension version of the song, or then that sort of thing. So like yeah, game audio has always been like a minor fascination of mine. So like I've always had a
Oh,
thing
nice.
for like game music. Um,
I didn't. I went the opposite route. It's like I was just like, why isn't this on the CD? And then I just started buying game soundtracks.
mm.
It's like,
Yeah, I did. I started in on that, pretty early as well. I've still got a decent collection of game soundtracks. I've got like a complete set of all the Samurai Showdown soundtracks, like from start to finish.
oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's a lot, a
Is
lot.
and this is like a aside. So I know like Neo Geo CD is like kind of known for like load times, but also
Mhm.
like these amazing like arranged soundtracks.
Yes.
Is do they also is like most of the Neo Geo CD? Do they also feature like the original audio, or are they pretty much all like just arranged
It
music? I know this
depends.
is like a total aside.
It depends on the time frame. The early games, especially the ones where they tended to be able to fit the entire game into memory, like you
Mm,
put in like Last Resort on CD or something like that, it just loads the entire game because it was, relatively small, significantly larger than Super Nintendo games of the time. But, but it would just be, the Red Book audio on the disc would just be the Neo Geo audio.
mm.
But it was, a few years in, probably starting around like Fatal Fury 2 or thereabouts. I couldn't say definitively, but like when you, basically like, SNK did some kind of licensing deal with Pony Canyon to have these arranged soundtracks made,
Oh wow.
and so that's why like Pony Canyon was the publisher for like all of their music for throughout the 90s. And it apparently, and this is not something I can't say that this is absolutely definitively the case, but my understanding is that Pony Canyon owns those arranged recordings.
Okay.
And if SNK wants to use them, they have to license them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is apparently why the jukebox mode in King of Fighters 15 only has the original soundtracks,
Oh yeah. Okay.
because SNK doesn't own those recordings, so they can't
Hmm.
just use them as however they want. That is, like again, and if someone has insider knowledge on that and can definitively say that I'm wrong, then yes, please do, because I like being right, and the only way to always be right is to be willing to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like actually getting back to the Samurai Shodown RPG. Um, when I was working on that, and like I did the translation of the script, and then there was just a whole bunch of other stuff that had to be, fiddled with. Like part of it was just learning, when you're dealing with trying to essentially reverse engineer how a game works, and without any kind of tools or anything. And one thing that I learned early on in my experimentation with Samurai Shodown RPG was that a lot of the control codes and stuff in it were context sensitive,
Uh, Meaning, can
meaning
you explain
that
that for me?
okay, for instance, there's one command which I just labeled as speed, and it takes two, and there's like two like hex codes that follow it. If you and but like the first of those is always a double zero. So you do speed 00 and then like 06. That means wait six frames and then display the next tile.
Okay.
Um, but like but it had to be like that same control code. If by itself it would set the automatic speed of the text being displayed.
Hmm.
But if it was preceded by this other command, then it instead of setting the automatic speed, it was a pause.
Oh, okay.
So if I did, P speed 0050, that's wait 50 ticks, like 50 frames. But if I left off that P at the beginning and it was just speed 0050, well, then it's going to basically mean like it's going to take almost a full second, like 5/6 of a second between every tile that it displays.
Hmm.
And like in order, and so like learning that, you basically like just took like this brute force approach. So I was just like, all right, I set about, like if you've ever done any kind of ROM hacking or anything like that, or looking for cheat codes and all that sort of thing, a lot of it comes down to just, you throw something at the system to see what breaks.
Right.
And so I just like started just fiddling around with it until I learned the ins and outs of just like how this system worked. And that was, and that took a lot of time and
Ugh.
a lot of, just tedious fiddling around and everything. And I think there was some, just at this point, trivial personal, drama stuff that was going on at the time. And some family stuff and all that kind of thing. And so I just got drawn away from the project for a while. And
And
then
what
like
year
like
about was this era?
mm, I would say because like I wasn't sitting there like it wasn't a thing that I was working on constantly.
Yeah.
So it was just like because I was also I had a full-time job, and when I was like and there was also and at some point during all this was some of the time I was working for XSEED, and like my work on Trails in the Sky took up my entire basically it was like uh I was working so much for that. I worked my regular 40-hour week job. I came home, I sat down and I translated until midnight. I got up, I went to work, and then like on the weekends I spent every waking hour. Like and I just and we still had to push for an extension. It was a
Jeez.
nightmare. Um, but anyway,
Man.
and then a couple years later, it's like basically I would just pick the game up and go back to it from time to time. Um, and I remember getting that was just like how fans can be. There's a certain contingent of fans who they think, oh, you're working on this, that means I have a right to it. Hurry up.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah, now, yeah, and I got there was a couple of bad experiences with that, and I was just like, you know what, I'm kind of soured on this. I don't feel like messing with it. Um, and then, uh, and like a couple years later, I decided I was like, all right, because I still enjoyed it. I still wanted to finish it. I still enjoyed the process of working on it. But like I picked it back up and I got kind of drawn back in. I started making some progress and figuring out like the combat menus, which was this whole other set of
What were your big obstacles like at this point, or what was like the biggest slog that you were having to go through?
Um, a lot of it was changing graphics because like there's a whole bunch of like graphical text and stuff in the menus and like learning
Oh
finding
God,
these things
that
and
sounds horrible.
it was quite the pain in the ass. What's funny is I could go back and look at the intro sequence where you have like all the follow the path, obey both like train both body and mind and all that kind of stuff because that
Mm.
was all in Japanese before, and so that and just had to basically make the text in a graphic and insert it and then just hex edit the file that was that called up those graphics and say like, okay, instead of this tile, point at this one, and then essentially just kind of fiddle with it over and over again until it looked right.
Yeah,
And
oh
like
God.
going back and looking at that, I'm just like, I have no idea how I found it in myself to do all that. Because I remember thinking like when I did pick the project back up, for this final stretch that led to its eventual release, I'm like, boy, because I was worried there for a moment. Like, please tell me I didn't lose this, like that I still got this work because I do not want to redo this. But anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit. Um, I had I was, like I said, I got back into it and I'd started to make some progress fixing some of the, oh, actually, like I'm actually, one of the long pauses. So one of the things was the way that the game handles voiceover.
Hmm.
Instead of like, the way that most games do nowadays, you'll have like each line is its own discrete piece of audio
Oh yeah.
like that's the typical. I mean, because that's the way you would kind of tend to think it should work. But that's not how it worked back then, at least not on the Neo Geo CD. But you would think like it'd be like I'm going over here. It's like call up the file that says I'm going over here, and then you go to the next line. It's like you go over there, and then call up that file that says you go over there. Um, well, with the Samurai Shodown RPG, the way that it works is like when it loads in all the voice data that could be played in an area, which was kind of it basically like the way that a lot of older games worked back then was that you go into this town and it's loading up every single bit of information that will ever be called upon in this town,
Oh, cool.
no matter where you are in the story. Like if you come back here three times, all three of those times are in memory.
Oh
Like
wow.
when you're in there. Like that's how and that's how Samurai Shodown RPG worked. But anyway, like so it would, but then it would say like at the start of a scene that had voiceover, it would say, play this sequence of audio files. Set the text speed to this. Now add pauses and adjust text speed as necessary to keep the text synced up with the audio.
Wow.
Yeah,
Fun.
which is bass backwards, let me tell you. Um, and what happened is that so I had to like I got some help from someone who made like this little Visual Basic program to help me convert because as I'm switching stuff over to English, well this is not the same length as the original Japanese, so I need to adjust timing and everything. So I had to essentially just do a hell of a lot of math on every single line that had voiceover. Thankfully it wasn't all that many, to get to make sure I had the timings right.
Oh my God. Wow.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. So, and like I said, it's like, P speed 00 and then 50. Well, this still infuriates me to think about to this day. So, like I was, I got, I did some preliminary testing and everything, and it seemed like I'd gotten a good grasp on it. And I had a utility to help me just kind of feed it. Here's the Japanese line, and up here, and here's the English line up here. It would tell me what the duration of the entire line would be. Then I would just adjust it so that it all looked right. Like in doing that on a line by line basis. This was the single most tedious aspect of the project. Um, and what I found was that after getting done with most of the game, that I had miscalculated. So I had fed the guy who made that VBA app for me that did the calculator. I had fed him the wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
So every value that I changed everything to was broken.
Uh-huh.
Because as it turns out that like this is the one place in the entire game where it wants a decimal instead of a hexadecimal.
Oh, really? Why was
Yeah.
that?
I don't know. Why it's like that. But basically, like if you pass the speed command a hexadecimal value, it just ignored it entirely.
Uh-huh.
So, and I know I'd spent, I don't even remember how long it was, working on getting all the stuff in the script timed and all that. And then when I found that out, I was just like, I've got so much work to redo. And then I was just like, all right, I got to take a break. And, it's like it was just one of the very disheartening moments. And and so I was just like, all right, that means this is going to have to, it's going to take forever for me to redo, like at least a couple of months. And I just did not have it in me at the time, especially with like the personal drama bullshit that was going
Yeah.
on,
And like,
and family stuff. But so like, and then a couple years later, that schedule's cleared up, and I have just like, I should start fiddling with this again. And I got back into it, and I started, like I started making corrections and starting to really and fix some of the errors that I made before. And that was, like I'd been, had put in another couple months on it and just making, just solid progress. And that if you look at my YouTube channel, what I was posting up stuff of like, Nakaruru and Rimururu combat menus, like was one of the things where I was, making some progress on
oh
that.
yeah, I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah. And then and Facebook Memories decided to remind me of this because it was apparently like this happened like 4 days ago, and 4 days and like, 11 years or however long ago it was. Like this was when this happened. So it was in November that like, and the hard drive that it was on crashed.
Oh my God, really?
And that was one of those I almost said working designs, Western Digital, USB 3.0 drives, which means it was everything on the drive was automatically encrypted. There was like a hardware encryption thing on those drives. And I was like, I don't have the money to get this, to get recovery on this. And I was just like, I still had like an older backup, but it was without any of the work that I'd just done in the last couple months.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I guess that's it. So like I put the project away, and I didn't touch it again for years. Then I just figured like, all right, I guess I can't, I can't afford to take it to a drive recovery because like the thing it went from like $300 to $1,500 was the like the range that like Best Buy's data recovery thing was asking, and I was like,
Jeez.
I don't have that kind of money. I mean, that's the thing. This was back in like 10 years ago, and that was worth significantly more. But
Yeah.
I mean, and it was not like it wasn't unrecoverable. Like I could redo it. I still had the tools. I still had like my previous build of the game. But I just like it just completely sucked the wind out of my sails.
Yeah. I mean, that even happened like to me, like I would try to have every, and I'm not, my project is like infinitesimally small compared to like what you
Mm,
did, and my Google Drive like somehow like overwrote
hmm
like a newer version of what I have, and it's like I'm not working on whatever I was doing. I'm not working on that for days, weeks, like whatever, and that's just
Yeah,
like a small drop in the bucket compared to
yeah.
like oh my God, and
I
the
was.
arduous nature of like what you were doing,
I
to
mean,
boot, and the time.
what's funny is that it's kind of like when you lose your progress in a video game. Like
Yeah,
when you go back to redo it, it's like, well, I lost 3 hours of progress. Then you found like, wow, I only made like in those 3 hours, I made half an hour's worth of progress. Like when you go back to do it, it's like it takes you half an hour to
yeah.
do it. So like, but it was there's a YouTuber who goes by Video Game Esoterica. And he and I just ran across each other on Twitter. Um, and we was talking because he was looking at he was doing some stuff about various Neo Geo stuff. Actually, it started because he was doing some videos about the Hyper Neo Geo 64,
Oh, cool.
which was like like one of those weird little personal obsessions of mine. I have this like an irrational amount of love for that hardware, despite the fact that it only had 7 games on it. Um, but anyway, but that's how he and I got talking, and he was saying, "Yeah, I was thinking about doing something about like doing this and this and this and that." It's like, "Yeah, Samurai Shodown RPG." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, if you're gonna do that, then like I could sit like I had a fully playable beta, and it was like it was all in English and everything except for some of the audio only bits.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and but it was like it wasn't polished. Like none of the script, none of the voiceover stuff was timed properly,
Mm.
and it was just like this is very clearly unfinished.
Did you ever
Um,
think about releasing it at? Or that's just like not. I mean, because you're a professional translator, I guess, so that probably wouldn't have. It's not something
eh,
you would do. Is that
I
right?
mean, like there were a couple moments here and there where it occurred to me that I could just toss it out there and say have at it, like just to upload it somewhere anonymously and just like wash my hands of the
Yeah.
entire thing. But I could never.
Did you like Princess Crown? Did you see like the drama
Yeah,
with that?
yeah. But it was like I could never quite bring myself to do it. Like, and I saw that like there's that French translation patch that was out there, which cribbed very nakedly from the videos of mine because it was like, well, those icons were drawn by my friend.
Oh,
Like I
really?
know, yeah, like the guy Combustocrat who did all the like the new artwork for the game, like any of like the new logo and like the stuff that appeared, like all those things that appear in the opening when you're first selecting
Did
your
you?
characters and all that.
Yeah. How did you feel when you saw that in someone else's work?
It was mostly just like you motherfuckers. Yeah, but it was also like, well, but I was also very much like, well, mine's never happening. So, like I'm not gonna, there's not a point in making us think about it.
Mm.
But but I was like, I have to admire the chutzpah of it because like they had to basically recreate those from a grainy ass YouTube video that was recorded at original resolution. So like those and you know what YouTube does to low res video. Um, it's not pretty. But anyway, so I said like, well, if you want to do that, I can let you use play the beta, like the unfinished beta. And so he put out a video about the Samurai Shodown RPG, and like it included that, and it was just like had this got this huge response, and so people were just like just excited. Holy wow, this is like is this actually going to happen now? Because I think there was several false starts of other people tried to to go and
Mm.
translate the game.
Did you have
And,
any communication with any of those other projects?
mm-mm. No, I was completely out of like I withdrew almost completely from like any kind of like fan spaces and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like I'm I have a simple philosophy, and that's something where like I'm going to make some people mad when I say this, but all fandoms are poison.
Uh huh.
And because there is no group of people there, any group of people that congregates over a shared opinion is not going to be dominated by its best, kindest, or most reasonable members. It just doesn't happen. Um, and like I think that people just kind of like I'm content to be like a fan in the background. Like my fandom, like my personal fandom, is very much individual to me. Like I'm a huge fan of Silent Hill. No involvement with the fandom. It's like when people and like one thing that I get kind of frustrated by is like especially in the modern day is like people have this notion that like if you love something that means it belongs to you. Like no, it doesn't though. It's like people you should listen to the fans. Like no, you should obey your like if you're a creator, you obey your creative instincts. If your creative instincts say that what the fans are suggesting is the right thing for these characters and stuff, then yeah, do it. But otherwise, like I can't stand the whole just knuckling under to fan demand and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of thing that gave us like the rise of Skywalker, which is
Yeah. I'm.
like I don't and what's funny is like if there's if anyone could lay any degree of claim to an IP like that I've that I love this thing and so it belongs to me. I'm an authority on it. I could do that with ease. I don't because I don't want any part of that. Like I don't claim any ownership. I'm not an authority on it. I worked on it because I loved the series. Like the entire reason I got started doing it in the first place is because like I love this series and I want more people to be able to play them. Um, and essentially the same thing with with the Samurai Showdown RPG.
Yeah.
You know,
That's how I feel about like like Metal Gear, but even
Mm.
even in like my like fighting game and like Ohio DDR circles, like people know this. Well, at least in like DDR, I guess it's like, oh, like
Yeah.
Chris is like really into like Metal Gear and everything,
Mm.
and but like I ended up like the girl that I dated before I met my wife, who's now like I'm still friends with and is like married to like another guy from the
Mm.
DDR scene, is like cool and everything. She was also like a really big Metal Gear fan, but I
Mm.
realized that like we had like a small age gap, and she started with MGS2, and I started with MGS1, but also like the
Right.
NES version. And then I went back to like the MSX versions before
Right.
MGS2 and like all that stuff. So I felt like, and I still kind of feel like, even from what Kojima has like said in like interviews, that kind of like, oh, like each Metal Gear game is almost like should kind of be taken as its own thing. Like, yes, there's this overarching plot, but like the themes of one game don't really apply to like the other. And so I'm more of that persuasion, like all the things like that. And
Yeah.
I,
Kind of a holistic outlook on it.
yeah, and I would meet people online that, you know, you get in a conversation about Metal Gear, and they're like, oh, like they're looking at like the timestamps of like the plot of like MGS like V and everything, and I'm just like,
Mm.
dude, this is like the total exact opposite of what he's like saying to like focus on
Mm.
his games. But then it's like, well, who gives a shit? Like, they enjoy it like that, and I
Right.
enjoy it like this, and it's like I'm too old to like care. Like, who cares
Yeah,
anymore?
exactly.
Like,
I mean, people they get so worked up about it. And I'm like, you have your like, for instance, just an East opinion that a lot of people don't share, but like, I love East 8. Fantastic game.
say it
I
again.
I
Which?
love East 8.
Oh, okay. I thought
Fantastic game.
eight's really popular, isn't it?
It is. No, it is. But like that's not the part that people are going to hate me for. I was like, I despise the ending.
Oh, how does it end? I own it, but I'm never gonna beat it. You can tell me.
Oh, well, it's like I can't go into like going into detail on it is would just be incredibly tedious, but it does this, one of the things that it does to it just makes all these, weirdly sweeping pronouncements about the world and its history and its lore and all this kind of stuff. I'm just like, this is not what I love and appreciate about the East series.
Is it
Um,
trying to like connect more of the games together in kind of like a sudden
in
way that's not woven into the fabric of the game itself, or?
in a sense, but I think a lot of it is just like they moved very thoroughly away from the thing. Like when they brought the series back with E6, and then from like and then they did Oath and Felghana and then Origin,
Is that on
and
PSV that they brought it
uh,
back?
E6. Well, originally the game, the game originally E6 came out on PC first,
Okay,
and it didn't come to, it got a port to PS2 and to PSP a couple years later, and those came to the US a couple years after that.
okay.
Um, but like one of the things that they were like actively setting out to do was sort of to give the series a bit more of a through line than just Adol goes somewhere and an adventure happens.
Okay.
Where they trying to kind of unify the whole thing with like what the whole like the Galbaland from East 3 or Oath and Pelgana, and like making tying that to like the Black Pearl and all this other stuff. And it's like, this is cool because
Totally.
it all kind of struck me as just very well thought out.
Hmm.
And then like after East Six, or rather sorry, after East Origin, then they kind of went into a different direction and started covering other stories that didn't have much to do with that side of things. And
That's been my interpretation of, because it's like I played 1, 2, and then 3. You know, it's like nothing to do with 1 and 2, and then everything that I've read about the more modern games, I still I'm in the middle of like 4. I still haven't beaten 4.
mm,
Yeah, I kind of thought they were all just like isolated like adventures. Even the later ones, I had no idea that like 6 was like kind of tying them all together. That's really cool.
yeah, and the thing is, the way that it does it is in a way that I think is actually like extremely well done. I mean, I would go so far. I still regard like East Origin is narratively one of the best prequels I've ever seen. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
every
I have played. Once I found out like Origin, I was like, oh, this is like an actual prequel to
yeah
like these old like forgotten. Like, this is really cool. Yeah,
yeah
I
and like
really
and
enjoyed
that
Origin.
yeah it was kind of like, I mean, honestly, I felt a lot of it was like the A lot of this was so well done. It was like, are you sure some of these threads weren't, some of these narrative decisions weren't made back in the day. It was kind of like when I first played Soul Reaver.
Mm.
Like some of it just ties back into plot elements from um, the original Blood Omen Legacy of Kain so well that I was like, this is just like extremely well, like, but it was like Amy Hennig, and she's really, really good at what she does. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like some of the later ones, like with E7s, I love E7 is a fantastic game, love it. But like there's barely a story.
Mm.
And then like with those, a lot of people don't like, Memories of Celceta is essentially it's kind of like E7.5 in the in terms of the it is the official canon version of East 4.
Yeah. Mm.
But it is but like the ending of that game is very abrupt, and apparently they kind of handed off the writing to like junior staffers is what I heard, and like it's not great.
Mm.
Um,
Which
but
which
yeah,
is
like
your favorite version of East 4?
um, in my opinion, the best game overall is going to be Dawn of East.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my translation of Mask of the Sun is probably like my personal favorite of what I like what I the work I'm proudest of.
Oh, really? Why is
Like
that?
a lot of it came down it was a lot of it came down to a technical reason. Because most of the time when you're doing these game scripts, they're not in any kind of order.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like what yeah whatever, and you can only figure out context through extensive testing. Like and generally when you see these things, you translate the lines individually and hope they make sense, because like you don't know if like this line is not actually does not actually come after the one that's right in front of it. It happens like 3 hours later or something like that. It's from a different scene.
Was that it?
Um,
Just as a quick question, even on the official translations that you did, was it pretty similar as like working like a fan, where that's how the file structure is, and or did you have more guidance when you did like these official translations?
a little more guidance there's because like generally those you're looking at stuff in an Excel spreadsheet that's got like this is the block of text that you're or this is like the segment that you're working on, and here's the Japanese, here's where your translation's going to go.
Okay.
And like if you were lucky, sometimes it would even tell you the name of the person speaking. Because like that's the other thing is most of the time you don't know. Like you all you can do is just translate based on the direct literal meaning of the words, devoid of context. And that's one of the things about Japanese, I'm sure is like context is everything.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of the times, it is kind of funny. Like people like there's the right wing grifter types going on about pronouns, and meanwhile in Japanese, most of the time they don't even specify the subject. Like they specify the subject at the beginning of basically at the beginning of a paragraph, and then they just continue talking, and they're still talking about that same thing, but those lines don't those are not part of the same string of text that could be coming from the next thing, and you don't know if that's what they're if they're still talking about the same thing, but you kind of translate based on the on the assumption that they are, and that's how you wind up with context errors. And that's
Yeah.
why like play testing for context is such an important thing with Japanese.
Yeah. Even in Fantasy Star, like the worst I felt about. I released it. This was the first thing I ever did, and I
Mm.
was like working off of someone else's translation, The Cutting Room Floor, but also just like
Yeah.
that's what I started off doing, and then I just ended up kind of like rewriting, just like relocalizing, just like everything to make it like as an enjoyable experience as I could, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I had a lot more of like working design style writing. Like
Hmm.
I didn't like. I tell people it's like that doesn't mean like poop jokes and like like president's jokes or anything like that. It just means like the breezy style of writing. I just
Hmm.
like really enjoy. So that's why I try to like have characters speak how they would like in like a fun book or something.
Right.
And I had like in the same thing. It's like the file structure was the same. It's just like all like random dialogue. And
Yeah.
I had like a girl like complaining about Zio, who's like the first act villain,
Mm.
who just like dresses like a goth, and it like this all these details I found out like developer info about like his character and stuff I got to put in the game that isn't in the game at all, that like makes the character like actually make sense and all this stuff.
Right.
But I just had a character like making fun of his outfit, and then it turned out that character was like a girl in the basement of a town that everyone else had been murdered. So someone was like, "This translation is like so disrespectful," and I was like, "Oh man, like, no, I had no idea like who spoke that line. Like, no, I'll change that like right now. Like,
and it's something people think that you're just handed this very neat like script with all the blocking and all stuff. And I wish it worked that way, man. But like one of the things that I found, we're like, there's this big whole to do about like, like, there's this anti-localization crowd, and it's
I was wondering if we would would come up in our
of course
conversation today.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the people talk about like complaining about like socialism or wokeness or whatever. It's like, okay, can you define those terms? Like, and they'll think like, and they'll come up with this stock answer like, well, that doesn't mean anything. It's censorship. No, like it just means that like, in essence, localization boils down to translating something in a way that sounds like actual humans would say it. And that's why, like, that's my single best piece of advice to anyone writing dialogue. Say the dialogue aloud. Speak the lines aloud. Hear how they sound coming out of your mouth. If they sound, it's like, would you ever say these words to someone in this situation? Like, this is not how humans speak. And
that's exactly how I try to write, and that's exactly how I try to approach my dumb little project. And I agree 100%.
I mean, like the closest, like I've never been one to like, just to play like super fast and loose with translations or anything like that. But I'm not afraid to tweak a line, or to tweak an entire conversation just so that it sounds like something that, actually like here's a line that every anime fan has heard, assuming they've ever listened in Japanese, but it's omae dake wa yurusanai, which is literally like translates to, you are the only one I can never forgive or will never forgive. Like, I'll never forgive you. Like, anytime I see that in subtitles, I'm just like, okay, we got people are being a little too literal.
Yeah, because I wonder, like even in like Dragon Force, because it's like I love working design style and everything. I think that was the first time I noticed that line, and I was just like, you never say that in English.
No,
it's just like not.
The reason is that it apparently, it stems from, there's like a cultural kind of meme in Japanese, and like meme in the original sense, not the words with funny picture with words, where if someone has wronged you and they extend to you a sincere apology, it's considered extremely rude not to accept it. So in essence, they're saying that like if someone's like, "Omae dake wa yurusanai," it's like, what you've done is so egregious that you could, bow and scrape before me and extend to me an apology, and I will not accept it. And it's like, and in essence, it's like, I'm never letting this go.
Yeah, and so probably like one of the worst things you could say, I would imagine, in Japanese without, like you don't have to yell and scream at someone to express like, this is the worst thing I could say to you, right?
Yeah, but I mean, but like the closest, like that, my go-to, equivalent for that is like, you won't get away with this, because that's essentially the a very similar kind of sentiment that is being expressed there. Like, I'm not letting this go. Like, I will, I'll remember this. You will pay for this. You will, like, there's, this is something that you will be called to account for in some form or fashion.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, like that's just kind of it's one of those like go-to lines, and it's like it's such a trope that because it's like that line gets used so many times in so many shows and so many games.
Yeah.
Because like it's just like, but it is it's something where like that just it sounds incredibly awkward and stilted. If like I won't forgive you, I'm like, well, I wasn't asking for your forgiveness, so.
Yeah,
it's just like that's just a thing like to a native English speaker that just sounds a little bit clunky.
Yeah, and it doesn't express, right? Am I right to like say that it doesn't express what it really means?
Right.
If you hear that in Japanese, like in native Japanese, it doesn't. We don't read it. We don't.
Right.
Think of it that it doesn't mean it doesn't give you the same emotion, right?
Right. Well, there's a sentiment, and then the anti-localization crowd, they think, literal means accurate. Like, this is not, we're not translating between Romance languages here. This is not like French to Spanish or Spanish to Italian and everything, where it's like you can almost do one to one. I mean, there are nuances and stuff that might get lost and everything, but like you can at least assume that you're getting a good like 75% of the original meaning because like they share a common etymological root. Um, Whereas with Japanese, it's just like, all right, here's like this language is completely different structure and a whole bunch of different cultural assumptions and stuff that come along with people speaking it. And like when I see these, monoglot anime fans, like it's like you don't understand, like, oh, that was the one thing I was going to mention about the dubbing, or like the Japanese voiceover, is that like scripted Japanese, it's slowed down and it's overpronounced.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Because
that.
like if you go look up something like Morning Musume or something like that, just one of those unscripted Japanese morning shows. You hear the way that people speak to each other. It's like I mean, and it's super rapid fire, and so like you'll hear in scripted Japanese, it's slowed down, it's overpronounced for dramatic effect. And it's essentially the kind of the equivalent is like soap opera dialogue.
Oh, okay. It's a good
So
analogy.
like yeah, it's like everything is a little bit everything's is just kind of heightened.
Yeah,
Um,
heightened. Yeah.
and so like I mentioned my friend Chris, he was saying like one thing he said to one of his girlfriends because he did this on purpose because he was trying to like just make her like ugh. And like there's a way that you can say like it's a very melodramatic way you can say like look at this, like behold. It would be the equivalent of saying behold, like to say to someone like behold, I brought you dinner. But it was like sonome de miru ga ii. Literally like, with those eyes is good to look.
Mhm.
It's like literally translates what that line is, but it's basically saying like he's just showing her like this, a piece of paper, and she just kind of looks at him like, really, you know. Um, but yeah, like but like you can translate it as just look at this, but like it's missing all of the the nuance of what that line would mean.
I usually
Um,
tried it, and it's like I'm just like a total like beginner with Japanese and everything. But for people who don't know or haven't like studied it, I guess at all,
mm,
I at least try to explain like like wakarimasu, like right. I mean, it literally means like understand. I understand, but like
right,
I mean, you could translate like without. There's a million things I could really say in Japanese, but they're not going to say those literal words.
right.
Like I mean, that could mean
That's
like like go to hell basically,
right.
right? Or like,
Well, yeah, it's like the people don't a lot of people don't seem to really kind of to get it's like some of these people they treat Japanese like it's a simple substitution cipher. Like you
yeah,
just swap this word for this English equivalent and you get an accurate translation. I'm like, you'll get a translation,
yeah,
and like it will technically be accurate if you're translating words individually, but like again, it's like if you're not taking into account context, you can say like like you said, wakarimasu, like wagata. I mean, it's like that is in like five different circumstances, it could mean like someone saying like yeah, all right, I understand, or it could be something as casual as got it, and so if you don't have that understanding of like the level of politeness being used or the context of like who is this person speaking to, like, kind of like the whole thing with like omae mo, sensei mo, realizing that like oh shit, I should not say this word to that person. Um, and if you don't understand that, like then basically like if you're relying on Google Translate for your understanding of what a piece of Japanese, means in English, then you don't understand. And like at that point, nothing you say on the subject should be taken seriously.
yeah.
And
Harsh, but I agree, and I can't. It's uh, I would probably try to like if I was having a conversation with someone. Yeah, I agree, and then I would like have to rack my brain to find like the most polite way to like
mm,
express that to be like you know what you're talking about.
yeah, and actually, there's it reminds me of like my ex used to watch a lot of I think it was Grey's Anatomy,
Oh,
and
my wife
yeah,
fucking loves Grey's
and
Anatomy.
but that, it was just like a scene from that where like one of the characters is Hispanic, and she speaks very good English, but she struggles sometimes.
Mm.
And that was just a bit where she gets very frustrated because like you know she's having to translate everything in her head as like before she says it. Um, and but she has this line where she says, "Do you know how smart I am in Spanish?" And that's something where like
Hmm.
I've always had like I don't I when I hear someone who's like you are it's like you fumble fuck your way through your first and only language, and so you have no right to criticize like the pronunciation of someone who's getting by in his second, third, or fourth.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like you'll make fun of people who speak with an accent and act like that makes you better somehow. It's like I've got no patience for that shit.
Yeah, it's like I studied Spanish in high school, but just as like a subject and not, I
Mm,
never like cared about really being fluent or anything.
mm,
And yeah, it was only starting to learn Japanese for the first time that I really thought, and I grew up like conservative too, so it's like
mm.
my life has like changed a lot since like college and like my 20s and everything. And yeah, it was just like so, you know, just mind opening isn't it doesn't even like describe to think
Yeah.
about like someone else sitting down who didn't grow up like with English of all languages, how ridiculous, um I learned like I had my college girlfriend, her uncle was Guatemalan and had learned English as an adult and everything. And I remember they told him he was a PhD doctor, and they told him at
Mm,
the that he passed with flying colors when he was at like some board thing, and he thought it
mm.
meant like that they passed him because he
Oh
was
yeah.
like like a different color of like human being.
Oh
Because it's
no.
like as like fluent as he was in English, he didn't know that idiom. And
Right.
English is like I couldn't imagine like having to learn English now that I've had some experience with one language that's like so
Mm.
different, and it totally gave me a different appreciation for
Oh yeah.
how hard it must be to learn
W-
English.
One thing that a lot of people don't, you don't really appreciate or really recognize about Japanese is that it's a very, it's a very friendly language to wordplay, because there are so many homophones.
Mm.
And since I kind of got used to. I had one of the advantages of like the anime that I got into at the time was Ranma, and so Rumiko Takahashi, she's really fond of puns.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of like there was a famous one which was like there's a thing early on in the series when Akane accidentally gets her hair chopped off. And like I remember the Viz comics, I was like, that's a really, really fantastic translation of a pun. Because like, kami, the hair, the kanji for hair can also be read as ke.
Oh, okay.
But and then kega is a wound or an injury.
Oh, okay. I haven't gotten to those yet.
But you can also but like you can also say, but ga is also a particle indicating this is what this is the subject that you're talking about. So kega, it means injury. It also means the hair is, whatever it is you're
Oh,
about to say.
okay.
So like the line is like, it's like when she got her hair chopped off and she's just kind of in shock. So like, and the guy comes up and says, is she, is she all right? But she says like, kega wa naika means like no, no injury, right? And then Ranma says, kega wa nakute mo kega nakunatta da zo, which is like, kega wa nakute means like no injury. Kega, her hair has gone away.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's like a
Sweet.
kega. So it's this little play on the kega kega. But the way that they translated it was like Ryoga comes up and asks like, she's not hurt, is she? Says no, but she sure got a bad cut. Like that's great. That is excellent way of that. I really love the way they handled that.
Have you ever
Um,
played any of the Phoenix Wright games?
I have not. I've never. I've always struggled to get into like the visual novel sort of thing. The
Hmm.
closest I've ever come was the Corpse Party series.
What's that?
Oh, well, it's a series that I can only recommend one of, but the first one is fantastic. It is a, it's a has a long and storied history, but basically,
What's it?
it's
What are those on?
well, like you can get them all on PC now, um, but like originally it came on like an obscure Japanese like RPG Maker type thing. But it went through a bunch of iterations, but like the first time it ever saw release in the West was on the PSP. And it's this horror series about this group of students who get tossed. It's kind of like this nightmare isekai, um, where like these kids get tossed into this nightmare version of a school, and it's like if you die there, you live like basically you experience the agony of the moment of your death for eternity.
Hmm.
I'm like, "Ugh, that's horrifying." But it's like just amazing music, really, really good writing. The and it's like it's not particularly gory, but but a lot of it's like a lot of the action is is described in text.
Hmm.
And it has some very evocative descriptions of some extremely unpleasant things being done to people.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because the guy who translated it, I still think it's his best work, but he was like the guy who brought me in to do work for XSEED with those translations.
Cool.
But he did this, and he was like this, you know, just kind of just really nice dude, a little bit on the goofy side, and you would never, but like but you see this like, are you secretly a serial killer? Like you read this script and you're like, are you secretly a serial killer? Because it was like, I didn't know I didn't know you even knew what it, like could even conceive of a thing like this. But yeah, it was just, you did a fantastic job, and like I can recommend all of them for their music, but I can only
Hmm.
recommend the first one for playing. But it is excellent game.
It's funny that you
Um,
mentioned like the writing, and I kind of wanted to ask you about that too, since you've like
yeah.
worked on like so many projects and everything. Like it was like I'm the kind of person that's like I like creative writing when I was in grade school, but I'm kind of like too chicken shit to really be a creator. So that's like I got into video games, and then I created
Mm,
like a tournament, and I got into like like DDR, and now and like
mm.
I write about video games and things like that. It's like I'm really not creating anything that takes a lot of um what do I want to say? Do you know what I mean? Like
The
I'm not
creative
creating
juices
something from
aren't.
like
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not
yeah.
creating something from like scratch out of like my own head. I'm not like putting
Right.
myself like out there with anything that I, quote
Mm,
unquote like create.
mm.
And so I haven't really like written much in like a long time in terms of like fiction or anything like that. And it was like weird to go over the dialogue of like a villain and like write villain dialogue because it's like
Mm,
I never like really thought about it before. But I mean, you really have to go into like a
mm.
part of you and like a part of your like the dark side of like your personality and everything to come up like with what like an evil character like does and says.
Right.
And
No.
yeah, it was just like I never would have ever even thought about writing like a character like that unless I had this experience like with Fantasy Star.
Right.
Um, so I was
No, it's
just
like
wondering,
that's
like,
huge. That's a huge thing. Like I love the dialogue writing. That's like one of my favorite things, especially when there is a character who's just like, who's just fun. Um, I remember there's one of the many translations of Final Fantasy IV out there where the first time you encounter Golbez, like the big bad of the game, and he just swats you away like flies. And like I don't know I don't recall what the original Japanese line was, but the way that they did it in the English was like, "It's been a pleasure defeating you." I'm like, I love that.
is that
It's like,
so? That's from like one of the fan translations, not the
yeah,
original.
yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, the original one. That's the one that gave us "You Spoony Bard."
Can you, as like a quick aside,
Mm,
I've never finished FF4. I didn't have a Super Nintendo as a kid, so
mm,
in college, it's like, oh, I can get a Super Nintendo for $15, and all these like great
right.
RPGs for 20, $30. It was the early 2000s.
Those were the days.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, like I really want to play Earthbound because I like the music in Smash, but thirty
Mm.
dollars is kind of a lot right now. But it's like, oh, I'll like pick up a copy of that. Okay.
Somewhere
Um,
down the line, it's like, yep, nope.
but yeah, so I still never played. I never got through 4. I played 6 and Trigger now and like all this stuff. Can
Mm.
you there's the hard thing about Square games, and you mentioned like ActRaiser. I'm like I always kind of raise the flag for like the lesser, like a Ys or like
Mm,
like Terra Enigma and like or like the
yeah.
Lunars and stuff like that. Can you like recommend the best way to play FF4, like translation wise? And I prefer like the
Mm,
Super NES, graphics and sound like the original. But
yeah.
there's like so many friggin' why are there so many fan translations for all
Yeah.
these Square games? I get
Because
overwhelmed and I can't pick
yeah,
one, and I can't do all the research on like all of them to
I would say for writing quality,
yeah.
the like it is unfortunately also the most difficult version of the game, but it is one where it's like it is the DS version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which I think that version also may be available on PC now. So
Mm-hmm.
I know the 3D version of Final Fantasy 3 is.
Oh,
But but yeah, like they just did a bang up job with the localization of that game.
oh, cool.
Because they just like redid the entire thing from scratch, and they did it with an eye toward like not quite Shakespearean, but just like with a very like writerly sort of approach rather than just being like it's a video game, just translate the lines. It's like this no, this feels like high drama.
Oh, cool. I'll
Um,
put that on my 3DS and yeah, because I
yeah,
need
so,
something portable to run through while the kids are watching you know Cocomelon and crap.
yeah. Oh, but you had asked me about like why I thought Use 4 was like my personal the one I'm proudest of.
Oh
And
yeah,
the reason,
yeah. You said Mask is your most
yeah,
your main
the
product. Your
we got on a tangent about like context errors. But the reason that I'm proudest of that one is because due to a quirk of the way that the game was coded and the way that Gideon's stuff was set up, I was able to reorder the entire script so that it was in chronological order.
oh really?
And I could notate this character is saying this is happening. Because I just like this very the script was very thoroughly annotated with context clues and all this kind of stuff. So it was just like everything just flowed.
Wow, cool.
And so I could just do everything, in just in its natural order. And it just felt more like I was just more like just like I was editing a script as opposed to just translating blocks of text,
Yeah,
like individual lines and everything. So like I never had to be like, is this, like, is he talking about this person or is he talking about that, that jewel over there, whatever.
yeah.
And but yeah, like, and
That's really
so the
cool.
end result, yeah. So the end result, I was very pleased with how it all turned out. And it's like, and it is kind of funny that it
Mm.
is that it is not the worst version of East 4. That would be the PlayStation 2 version. But definitely the least of the more commonly known ones.
Mm. Yeah, there's at least one line in the Fantasy Star, and all the work was done for me. I had a disassembly, so it's like I just had
Right,
script files I could like work off of, like
right.
still with coding and pointers and everything, but still like literal text. There was at least one line I still couldn't even find. Like, I played through the game X amount of time. I still can't find who says this one line
Yeah,
because it's like you have no idea.
yeah,
I put in the script like, please contact the creator of this patch if you
right,
if you're reading this right now.
right. So please, yeah, please tell me, because I mean, and sometimes there are lines that just don't get used. Like
Yeah,
sometimes
which
it's
is
just
probably what
straight
it
stuff.
is,
Yeah.
but it's still like, just in case, like I must know. This is
Mm.
in there somewhere.
Well, one of the things that I remember when I was doing the script for East 2, because I never worked on any of the old console version, like the PC Engine version was already done
And did
professionally.
and did Chronicles come out on PC or PSP? I
Well,
just want to get the timeline.
the way that originally what happened, they did a remake of East 1 called East 1 Eternal,
Is that for
and
PC?
that was for PC.
Okay.
And then they put out East 2 Eternal a little bit after that.
Hmm.
Um, and then later on, they redid the two of them, and they kind of updated the East One Eternal to match the visuals and the little tweaks and everything they added to East Two, and they put them out as East One and Two complete.
Okay.
And and you could buy, like, that was actually one of the I think the like up until the release of Chronicles on PSP, it was the only means outside of the PC Engine version where you could buy the two games packaged as one.
Mm.
Um, but then essentially what they did, they took the two complete editions and they, tweaked them a little bit again and put out and ported them to the PSP. Um, and that's what that was East One and Two Chronicles.
Okay.
And fun fact, the when I was in when I was talking with XSEED about the doing the like because I already done the script for Oath and Felghana,
Was
and they
was
were
that your first time working officially with them? Was
yes
Oath?
yes um
I'd like to,
and
and I don't want to interrupt again, but I do want to just ask if you could explain how you got involved with XSEED. Like, doesn't it be like right now? I just wanted to make sure I asked the
yeah
question.
we'll cover that. Let's see blah, blah, blah. Damn, I lost my train of thought.
Oh,
um
oh shoot,
no
sorry. I was
no
like,
worries.
I forget stuff. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
like really important. I need to like make sure I ask that. So you're
yeah,
talking
no.
about Chronicles and
Oh,
then
right. Yeah,
XSEED.
so there was, and then they brought they ported the complete versions to the PSP. And that's the one that they were going to, that they brought over. That XSEED got this whole package deal when they licensed East. They were bringing over the Oath and Felghana, East Seven, and East One and Two Chronicles
Oh, okay,
for
cool,
the PSP.
interesting.
And it was my script for Oath and Felghana that they bought off of me. I was not involved in Seven at all.
Hmm.
Um, and for East One and Two Chronicles, they were originally going to use the script from another game, like from another version of the game. And
What other version?
I think it was the DS version.
Oh, okay.
Like there's a East Legacy. And I own that game. I've never played it because I couldn't like. Well, they changed some gameplay stuff in ways I didn't like, but also the script is terrible.
Uh,
And they were like, and I was like, please use like I will let you use my scripts for for I will sell them to you for a song. If you will use this instead of that, and essentially it was not even like I just wanted the like I love East One and Two, and I wanted to have it. I wanted it to have like the best the best version of the game that I possibly could. Um, can you hold on for me just a moment?
yeah.
Yeah, be right back.
Hmm. We're taking a break. I'm gonna get another Diet Dr Pepper. Oh, you know what? It's my first time doing that. I can pause this.
Yeah, you can pause this.
Yeah, I can. Okay, I'm gonna pause it real quick. Recording, and we're good. We're back.
So, but yeah, like so, and basically, like I mentioned Corpse Party before.
Hmm.
Um, but the guy who he was XSEED's localization director for a while, for several years. And he was also a big fan of East. Um, he's a old school. He's like an MSX collector. Like he loves the old school. Like he still posts up like, I got this new MSX find and all this kind of stuff. And it's like
Sweet.
you see some really cool stuff out of him. But so he was working on a lot of stuff for them. And when they got the license to do Oath and Felghana, they were like, well, like the head of XSEED, Ken Berry, I believe is his name. They were going to have to outsource the translation, regardless. They just didn't have the manpower in house at the time to do these multiple projects at once.
Hmm.
So so they're like, well, we're going to need to hire someone to do the translation. So he said, well, it's like there's already a translation out there that's good, and I know the guy who did it. If you want, I can reach out to him and see if he'd be interested in selling it to us.
Did
Um,
you? So you did your own fan translation of Chronicles specifically?
yes, because like that was where I got started in doing translation stuff, like just the working on East One, and because that was just like it was East One is a small game. I want to say it was like 1,100 lines in the entire thing,
Hmm.
which is nothing. And like 1,100 strings, and that includes like item descriptions and item names and stuff
Oh,
like that. It's
yeah.
not even all dialogue.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
system text and stuff like that. But anyway, like so the Oath and Felghana translation was already out there, and so they said like, would you be interested in in working on this, or selling the translation to us? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, especially considering I'd already done the work, and they all they were doing was just buying the script. So I was just like, all right, here's a little bit a little bit of money, not nearly as much as I would have would like, but I mean it was probably a fair price for the time. Um, I
Are
don't
you able
know
to give
because
any ballparks with that, or
I
I'm not? I don't
I
want to.
I don't feel comfortable like divulging that like the
Yeah,
amounts,
no problem.
but it's significantly less than you probably think. Um, but anyway, so it was just like okay then. So they bought that from me. I handed off the script file, and that was the end of my involvement with the game. But like I
Oh
said, that
wow.
was when they were also doing East One and Two Chronicles. I was like, well, here's another. I've got scripts for both of these, and if you want these instead of that, awful other version, I would be happy to sell you those for extremely, extremely cheap.
Hmm.
Um, and when I say extremely cheap, it was basically just like this is the lowest amount of money I can charge for this and have it still be considered legitimate. You know? But it was good. But essentially, it was just like I just wanted to have like I was proud of my script, and I was like I would rather have this than this clunky you know and plus it was also like all right, they trusted me enough with this one script that they bought that they had some confidence that I would that the other stuff would be would have the goods as well. And and so they bought it off of me for piddling little sum. And that was what led to doing some other work with them when Trails in the Sky got licensed. Then I got they tapped me to see if I would be interested in being like an outsourced translator for the game. Um,
And just for me, I just played Dragon Slayer Legend Heroes
mm,
like a couple months ago, and I'm gonna write like a hardcore gaming 101. And just reading about it, I was like, oh, this is like the beginning apparently of like the Trails
mhm.
series. So
Yeah,
where is Sky in terms of like the
Trails in the Sky is Legend of Heroes Part 6
okay.
because it's like the first two. There's like the Legend of Heroes, then there was like Dragon Slayer, which I think is Legend of Heroes 2, and then there's the Gagarov trilogy,
Okay.
which is like it's like the next three Legend of Heroes games were like the one of them's like a Cage Song of the Ocean. One of like the White Witch or like I can't remember. I've never played these games,
Hmm.
but like the Legend of Heroes 3, 4, and 5 comprise a separate trilogy of stories, and they did get brought to the U.S. On PSP, and those versions are legendarily bad. Like the localization is so sloppy to the point where like you'll see text run off the side of the screen because they forgot to include a line feed
Oh,
or
nice.
carrot, and like this, bugs and stuff like that. It was just like this is not finished. They published an unfinished product, and like and all three of them are like that apparently. I've never played them, but that is what I hear. But then like Legend of Heroes 6 was Trails in the was Sora no Kiseki, which is
Okay.
Trails in the Sky, and that was Trails in the Sky first chapter. And so like after that they just sort of dropped the Legend of Heroes moniker entirely, and it just became Kiseki or Trails was became like the signature of the series.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if you've played any of those games. I had not. I was not
Hmm.
previously familiar with them, and like I knew of them, but like you know I'm not the fan of menu-based combat that I used to be, like and haven't been for a while at this point. Um,
Yeah. You've been playing
so
JRPGs all your life, it's like,
yeah, I mean,
oh,
and eventually I think I just kind of burned out on them.
yeah.
Um, I
I'm the
still,
same boat.
like, admire and respect the style and the genre and everything, but it's just like this is not my speed anymore. Like, just, and as an aside, I thought the combat in the Final Fantasy VII remake and Rebirth were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I love
I
it. Yeah, I love it
Yeah,
too.
I have issues with those games structurally. Like, there's a lot of padding,
Yeah. Oh my
and
God.
like,
Yeah.
but like the actual combat gameplay, I freaking adored. Just, I
Yeah.
had
I couldn't
so
believe they
much
did.
fun.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how what a great job they did.
Yeah.
I've not really been a Square fan since like for a very long time.
Mm.
There's nothing like wrong with it. It's just not my bag anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, like,
don't tell
it's
me
not
anything
the
about
same
Rebirth though.
Yeah.
I have it installed, but I can't play
Oh
it till
yeah.
Christmas.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's like, but by and large, it's like there's just be prepared. Like, there's a lot of mini games. There's, the open world bloat is very much a thing in that.
Yeah, it was already
Um.
bad in remake, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
prepared.
It's Well, I mean, at least with a lot of it, it's just like it's less the here's kind of like the infiltrating the Shinra building and remake. It's like they added all that padding of having to like go hand over like the monkey bars across the lobby and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, is this really improving the game? As opposed to Rebirth, which there's just more of like there's just a lot of little side activities and stuff that you can do if you choose to do them, and it's only and to their credit, for the most part, they're optional. There is one part where it's just like, you're making me do this, and I'm not enjoying myself. Like, I just want to get back to the combat gameplay. That's where I'm having the most fun.
Yeah, I was telling
Um,
Kate, I was telling my wife because it's like I'm not like a FF7 fanboy, but it's like it's like a cool game. I loved playing it when I was little. I still like the game a lot, and I love the
mm,
music. And like I was walking around like and like finding like this kid's cats, and it's just like, man, this is like not what like FF7 is supposed to be about. I was like
yeah,
trying to like tell my wife, but she's
yeah,
interested in it, so that gives it good marks for extra marks for
yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, and it's a lot easier to. I mean, like, just to like for the backseat gamer or whatever, it's a lot easier to sell someone on the game those because they those games look amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they look absolutely stunning. Um,
There's always just stuff happening, and like that's how
yeah,
I describe like Final Fantasy. It's just like shit doesn't really make a lot of sense to me for like
it is.
most of the game, like with the modern FF stories, and that's why I kind of like stopped playing them. But I had to play
Yeah,
FF7 again. It's just like shit happening.
yeah. Well,
Something's
the
always
thing is,
happening.
what I found with a lot of JRPGs is that they don't tend to subsist on their narrative. They don't tend to like survive based on their narrative writing. Like, the real charm of most JRPGs is in their character writing.
Hmm, that's a
It's
really
like
interesting differentiation. I never really thought about
yeah,
before.
like because I mean, like, a lot of there's like the Yahtzee, the zero punctuation thing, his whole bit about like a bunch of teenagers banding together to use the power of friendship to kill God. It's like the generic JRPG plot, and I'm like, that is painting with an extremely broad brush, but there's a lot of truth to it nonetheless. But it's
Yeah,
like, like, the story of Final Fantasy VII is fine, but it's like it's not the story that people remember about that game. It's the characters. It is like Aerith and Tifa and Cloud and Tifa, like that love triangle, like the whole thing with Sephiroth. And Sephiroth is just his character is just like, boy, I like it's really interesting when he's on screen. And
yeah.
like that's what sticks with people less than the intricacies, I think, of the actual narrative more often than not. I mean, and that's not, and of course, I'm not saying that it's like a universal truism or anything,
Yeah,
but I think that is the
sure.
case for a lot of people. It's like you don't fall, because I mean, ultimately, when it's the same kind of like thing like with fighting games, like, you don't fall in love with a mechanic, you fall in love with a character.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
and like you can present me with like the most technically advanced and most the deep and nuanced and just amazing gameplay fighting game in the world. But if I can't find a character that I connect with and I want to play, then I'll never touch it.
That's why you'll never play Marvel.
I mean, it was,
Like real Marvel. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is like there's four gods, and you
yeah,
basically have to like I play Marvel, but it's the exception to that rule. I agree
yeah.
100%. I
I
play
mean, especially if
Ryu
you're
in
playing
almost every
yeah,
Street Fighter game, and it's because I
yeah,
like just connect with that character, and he's like
yeah,
really different in like Third Strike compared to like Alpha, but it's like
yeah,
it's because of yeah. And there's so many games. I just try to like explain to people. It's like, man, like I just like these. I just can't like get into this game. It's like I don't like the way it looks, or I can't find a character that I'm like into. Yeah, that's another. I totally agree with that. It's a
Well, that
wise
is, I mean,
observation.
that is ultimately that's why I've always been drawn to SNK. Because SNK, like they just put a lot of thought into just their characters, and they feel, you know, like especially in like KOF, they feel like they have a life when they're not on screen,
Yeah.
and I think that's ultimately it's kind of like that whole thing is like if I you know when you're looking at a movie or something, if when a character is not on screen, does it feel like they're still around? Does it still like they still matter? And that's something where like when you don't have that, then there's just nothing to it because like, that was my big problem with like the Star Wars sequel trilogy. It just feels like these movies exist only to show me exactly what's on the screen right now, and nothing else matters.
Hmm. Yeah.
And and but yeah.
Yeah. I was
Oh, but I
amazed.
was
I played 13 was the first KOF, and yeah, I was amazed by the level of detail in the
yeah.
backstories and the relationships of the
Oh
characters,
yeah.
and it wasn't just like M Bison's like being an asshole again, and it's like he's trying to evil Ryu psycho power. It was
Yeah.
like,
There's I mean
oh,
there's
this
a
is so
whole
cool, and it
there's a
really drew
ton of
me
mythology
into
and stuff. Yeah. I love
the
it.
universe.
Yeah. And then when you find the one character just like like this character just just clicks
Yeah,
for you. It's like, oh, that, yeah. It's like, oh, you're such an asshole. I love it. That kind of thing.
yeah.
Or it's just, he's just so smooth. He's so cool or whatever.
Yeah, like
Um,
and like once I learned about like Leona's like her air slasher and everything and like
mm,
her just like story, it's like so she's like my anchor. She's like my girl, like
yeah.
forever, in like SNK.
You're forever waifu, huh? Um, but yeah, no, absolutely. And that was one thing where like I always struggled to like, I told you I used to be like an, very much an SNK elitist. Um, but I
It's a
still
tough
like,
battle to fight. You're fighting a war
well,
there.
yeah, I mean, like, and to be fair, like, I got into fighting games because of Street Fighter 2. Everybody, at the time.
You
But it
were the
was like
best
when,
age too, man, because you could actually
yeah,
go to the arcade. Like I was
I
9.
was, yeah, I was like, I was because it was like 92 when Street Fighter 2 dropped, and I was like 18. So I was like perfect age for
That's not,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like, and that's when I discovered like the, like Fatal Fury and then Samurai Showdown. And it was like when I played like Fatal Fury and Samurai Showdown, like, it's like these are not, like it's Fatal Fury 1 especially. It's like this is not as polished as Street Fighter, but I love these characters. I love that's like I'm invested. Like I want to see Terry, succeed and get his revenge on Geese Howard and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, and that was and like whereas Street Fighter Two's characters are much more of kind of like the broad pastiche,
yeah,
or like
exactly.
or like almost like a punch out level of this. Like, all right, let's boil a nation down to like down to three words.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how that those characters are designed. I mean, like they're iconic in spite of that, but it's like I always kind of like it felt to me like they a lot of the storyline stuff got kind of bolted on after the fact, and so it just never felt as special to me.
yeah, yeah. It was always
Um,
very yeah. It's just like okay, like Ryu and Ken, they learned karate together,
yeah.
and like they
Um,
had a master.
Yeah, but we're talking about like Trails in the Sky. One of the things with like that game, those games are absolutely laden with text, and a
Mm.
lot of that is because every NPC has a story.
Hmm. Okay.
And that's something where like if you go, you meet some woman who owns a bakery, and you go and you talk to her, and she's like, "Oh, I'm worried about my son. He's gone off in the war. It's like I'm hoping to get a letter from him." So yeah, and they're like, but it's not. It doesn't start a like a side quest or anything like that. You go and you do more stuff, and you stop back in at her place. It's like, oh, I heard from my son. He's being transferred out to here, and all this other stuff. And then like later on, you hear like she got word that and like this isn't part of the game. I'm just like this is just kind of illustrating the kind of thing you might see, and it'd
That's
be like
cool.
I got
Wow.
like and you come back later and say like he's going off to this to this new station and being or like and then further on you've got I got word my son's remains were sent back to me. Yeah, that would be the kind of and everything like almost every character in the game is like that, even these just meaningless little side characters. And so
Wow.
that's what caused all the Trails games are like that, and that's why they are such an undertaking.
Wow.
I don't know if you ever watch what happened,
Mm.
look up like Matt McMuscles on YouTube. It's a series where basically you look at some like mostly games, but some piece of pop culture that had a difficult time, seeing its way to release.
Hmm.
And King of Fighters 12 is one of them on there. The
Oh, that'd be
localiz
interesting.
Yeah, the localization of Trails in the Sky second chapter is on there, and it's just like woof. Like and
Hmm.
when it was funny because like when I saw like because it was it was a lot of work. Um, I mean, a lot of work. It was extremely stressful. It was like a very like just in the fact that I was working every moment I wasn't sleeping, and it was a big strain on my marriage at the time. Um, because it was just like, all right, you're never, it's like you're not around. It's like I signed a contract. I have to do this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
How long did you have from
uh,
beginning to end?
I think it was. I want to say it was like 14 weeks. I was working on that game.
Jeez,
And
that
I
sounds
and I
kind of.
was
That's for you, and you were just doing the translation by yourself.
I subcontracted some of it out to my friend Chris, aforementioned friend Chris. And he worked on a lot of the NPC stuff. Although I can say that the character of Olivier, he's like this, the rakish ne'er do well type, like just one of those characters is just really fun. Um, my friend Chris was the one who found that character's voice.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, oh, okay. Like, he sent me a couple, like, because, in the character showed up in one of the files that he was working on. And he showed me some of his translations. I was like, oh, this is perfect. No, no, no. I need you to rewrite all of his lines. Um, and, so, to kind of recapture that style because of just like this character, you just made this character so much fun to see on screen. Um, like, some bit where he's this, eccentric, thinks a lot of himself is like and so but there was a line where he's written his name somewhere or he's written something down somewhere and like the woman's asking him, it's like, what, I'm sorry, sir, I don't quite understand this note here. What does it mean to roll the tea gently? You know, like, that's just him, because she was asking for clarification on his pronunciation, so he took a little bit of liberty to spice the line up, and it was just like, oh, that's so good, I love that. Um, but yeah, like that to me, that's good localization. You like add texture, add flavor, but retain the original meaning.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally.
and but yeah, like that was the and after that, um, I did they came back to me to work for to do Send on Kagura Burst, which like there was an anime at the time. I'd never heard of it. So like I actually had to do like product research for the
Hmm.
project. I had to go and find the anime and get a copy of it and watch it and everything. And just like, because there's like, it also has these visual novel type sequences or characters doing a lot of back and forth dialogue and everything. Um, and that was kind of where I realized that like, I don't like doing this unless it's a game I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's why I was like, hey, it's one thing to do it for East. It's another thing, or to do it for Samurai Showdown. These are series that are like just deeply embedded in my heart. Um, but but doing something for some, like just doing a series that I'm not invested in, I don't have like that personal connection with. It just like I don't have it. It's like it's just my heart's just not in it, and it's like I'm enough of a professional that I don't want to give it less than my best.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like the only I mentioned earlier, like if I could still have the opportunity to translate a couple of games, I would do like Real Bout Special Dominated Mind for PlayStation, which is
Why is
like
that?
what's it's the
And what is that too?
it is a PlayStation port of Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, but it is a canonical sequel to that game.
Oh, for
Like,
like story wise.
yeah, story wise,
Okay.
it has like a direct follow up. And it's got more storyline stuff that's just never been localized. And it's just like it's just kind of like the Samurai Shodown RPG. It's a chapter that non-Japanese fans just didn't really get to experience, and so it'll be fun to bring that over. The other one is Rakugaki Showtime,
Oh, what's that?
which is that is it's a do you remember Treasure?
Oh God, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, big
it's
fan.
it's one of their games.
What?
It's kind of like it's amazing. It's an arena combat game, and it's basically like all the characters are, rakugaki is the Japanese word for like scribbles,
Okay.
like just like childish, like sketch drawing. Um, and all the characters are like just these little kind of lazily done sketched, and they all like animate like their lines are constantly moving and everything. Um,
Hmm.
and basically, you like the premise is that the creator, this disembodied hand called God Hand, drew the entire universe into being and set these characters to fighting each other.
Uh-huh. I love
And
Treasure.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's incredibly charming. All the characters and stuff are in 2D, but it's basically like a combat dodgeball game
Hmm.
because rather than fighting each other with direct moves, like there is a melee attack and stuff like that, but it's like the primary thing that you do, you jump, do these leaps around the arena, and you grab items and you throw them at your opponents. Um, think like and actually like the character Marina from Mischief Makers on the N64, she is one of the playable characters.
What?
Yeah. Um and so because like her whole shtick is throwing stuff. So like she was an easy fit into the game. Um
What
but
is this
the
on?
PlayStation.
Man, I've never heard
It's
of this.
it's amazing. It is one of my favorite like people say like, what are your my two go-to import recommendations for PlayStation 1 is Rakugaki Showtime and Gamera 2000.
Oh, okay. I don't know
Gamera
anything about
2000,
that either.
Gamera 2000, Gamera like the flying turtle.
Yeah.
It is a naked, very blatant Panzer Dragoon clone,
Oh, really?
and it has live action cutscenes in English, and they're amazing.
Oh, man.
Um, and it has a fantastic soundtrack by Zuntata, like Taito's
Oh, yeah.
in-house band. And yeah, actually, like my one contribution to Hardcore Gaming 101 is that I did a write-up on that game.
I might have read that.
Yeah.
I
Um,
might have stumbled across that.
and
That sounds
but yeah,
familiar.
it's so much fun. But anyway, like Gamera 2000, or sorry, Rakugaki Showtime, it was the thing was like you rather than just having like a dodgeball, you throw around this thing called a smiley ball,
Hmm.
and it has this little angry face on it. Um, or just has this basically like this neutral face. And the more it gets tossed around, the more it bounces around it, it gets angrier and angrier.
Uh-huh.
And when it gets fully charged up, it starts glowing, and you hear the like this like the sample that's like the sample from like the Hallelujah chorus. And then the next person to grab the smiley ball gets to do a super move.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever played in my life. I'm having so much fun. But yeah,
Is it
like
two player, four player?
it's two player. It may be four player. Like I've never. I mean, I know that you can do two player. But yeah, like every single character in every single enemy can be unlocked for play.
Oh, like Guardian Heroes. It's
Yeah.
badass.
So yeah, very yeah. Oh yeah, it's cut from the same cloth in that regard. Also, it's just another treasure game. But yeah, like it got taken off the market because of some kind of copyright thing. So like physical copies got it really expensive for a while, and then it got a re-release on PlayStation 3. Um,
Whoa.
Yeah, but yeah, like if that sounds even a little bit interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. It's like I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's just one of those weird games, and like this is so silly. This is so much fun, and like
Yeah, to
even
even
your
know that
life,
there's a new treasure game that I haven't played is incredibly exciting.
yeah, but yeah, like even the life meters are little pencils. They're like colored pencils. Like they get shorter and shorter and shorter until they break at the like when the person gets KO'd. Yeah, just like it has all of that classic treasure charm.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. Um,
I did
but
want to
yeah.
ask before, because yeah, we
Mm,
and I know we mentioned time. It's getting late for you and everything,
mm.
and we've been going a while, which is awesome. I did kind of want to ask, how did you like? I wanted to be sure to ask, how did you make the leap between like hobbyists learning Japanese to like I translated East Chronicles 1 and 2 for fun, and then to have such a professional script that you could sell that to a company, which I don't understand why that doesn't happen with more fan translations, by the way, but that's a whole nother subject.
I mean, honestly, I'm not privy to the inner workings of like, what, you know, I think that in some cases that maybe companies worry about rights issues, if they're worried about like, if there's, not, dealing with unknown quantities. And I think the
Mm,
only reason that it happened for me was that the localization director already in place at XSEED, he knew who I was, and we've been in contact for a while. It's just like, yeah, like this is a solid script, and we can, and this guy, he's like, he's not going to be weird at us.
mm,
Um, I think that was the main factor. It was just like a right place, right time kind of thing.
mm.
And and it was because of that. And I'll touch on something with E08 here in a moment. But um, I sort of became this, almost by accident, like this authority on East. And I kind of left my stamp on the universe, like some of the terminology that I used. It was because like one thing where like I had to break a lot of hearts when I explained to people like there's when you see like in the measurements in East,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's mirai, which equates to a meter, and then kurimerai, like kilometer, kilometer, but but it's something where people like it, but I spelled it. I was just like, all right, how do I convey that this is how it's said, using English phonetics without it just being, just Romanized Japanese? Because I was deliberately trying to avoid that look. I didn't want to just make it as MERAI.
Yeah, I
So
respect
that's
that.
why I went to MELYE because I thought lie, like lie, like lye soap. Um, so like Melai, and apparently some people pronounce it Melier. I'm like, what?
Uh-huh.
That is not what that was. Um, or in Kurimerai, came Krimalai. Um,
Oh,
but
okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, that was what Merai is, Melai, Kurimerai is, Krimalai. Um, but yeah, like I had to break some hearts when I explained like that's not that. Sorry, like it's not Melier. Like that's not how that works. Um, but yeah, and so terms like the word like darklings,
Mm.
like that was actually something where like in East Origin, like there's like in East for Dawn of East, there's a group they're called Yami no Ichizoku, which is like Ichizoku is like a that's slightly old timey word for like family or clan. So the clan Yami no Ichizoku, like clan of darkness.
Mm.
And then like in East Origin, they just became known as Yami, the dark.
Mm.
And then so I was like, well, I'm not going to call them the dark. Like that's just hokey sounding. Like it's just we need something that sounds a little bit more appropriate. Like hey, let's end talk like do you remember the show Visionaries?
Mm. I don't know. When was that out?
That was like mid '80s, like back when like Transformers G1 and GI Joe were like making
Oh,
were still
okay.
big.
I was born in
But
'82, so I just
oh,
got
okay, so
like
yeah, it's a
I
little
would
a
I
little
would
bit
get home
after
from
your time.
school and like be seeing like the credits for Transformers. So it's like I love the
Gotcha.
toys. I never got to watch like
Yeah.
those shows much.
Um, but like the bad guys in that series were called the Darkling Lords, and I was like, ooh, Darkling, that works. And so that was where I got the word Darklings.
Oh, nice.
So like that's it was inspired by Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light. Um, and yeah, there was like there was basically cashing in on the craze for holograms at the time because they were like all the toys had the little holographic like you know things on them. Characters could turn into their little animal totems.
Oh,
And
okay.
they looked they were like the green versions of them. They looked like something out of like the Mortal Kombat animalities. So because they were just like these bright green like monochromatic versions of the characters of these animals.
Yeah, I can picture
Um,
that.
yeah, but yeah, but like so I kind of got to leave my mark on the series and everything, and I'm I'm content with that. Like I don't want to police how other people enjoy the series. I don't want to police how anyone should think about the series. I'm not even going to make a big stink about like you're pronouncing this wrong. I don't care. just enjoy this. And like my entire motivation for getting into doing it in the first place was like I wanted more people to be able to enjoy the show or the series.
Yeah,
And I feel like I played a significant role in making that happen, and I'm really proud of that.
yeah,
Um, and but like that's all I expect out of it. I don't expect compensation. I don't expect like any kind of recognition. I mean, some people follow me on, on Blue Sky and stuff because of my translation stuff, and it's like okay, but like that's cool, thank you. Um, but like I don't ever want to be the kind of creative who gets all like prescriptive about how fans should enjoy a work. And just, my only pronouncement there is just like, just remember, you love it, you don't own it.
yeah. Sometimes I
Everybody else is,
wonder if it's like it was just because I'm old that like I have that more of a philosophy too. It's like, oh, like with this fighting game stuff, we had like the second biggest tournament in the world,
yeah.
for like these games and everything for like a nice stretch there, and it's like
Well,
I don't mind like it's just it makes me happy that like players that we flew over, from like Japan, like after seasons meetings, like oh now they're sponsored by they would get sponsored because they did something
yeah.
like cool at our event. Then
And
it's
be like,
like
that's so cool.
I'm just yeah
I had a hand in that. That's so, yeah, like, that's so cool.
yeah it's like it
But
just makes me happy, and I don't really feel it's like oh if people
well,
know or
I
care
think,
about it like that's cool, but I mean to me it was like
I,
this it's
I
like
think
I'm just glad we did it.
age does play a role, but there's something like one of my favorite comedian is an Irish comedian. His name is Dara O'Brien. But he was this one thing where he was talking about, he was specifically talking about like music, like people have when you're, because when you're young, whatever it is that you're into, you want to be the best at being into it. Like I'm the best fan of Street Fighter. I'm the
Yeah,
best fan of the Beatles. I'm the best fan. Like I know all of their entire catalog. I know their history. Like you
yeah,
feel this urge to be like, performatively knowledgeable about something. And I think like as you get older, maybe it's just, maybe you just don't have the energy for it, but it's just like I've only got so many more years on this planet, and does not feel like a good use of my time.
yeah. And also,
And
when I started talking to Kurt from Hardcore Gaming 101,
mm,
I really like, the first step to knowing everything is knowing that you know nothing. I was
yeah,
like, Jesus Christ, man, like I don't know anything about video games. Like
yeah,
all these Japanese like PC games, I've
hmm
never like these computers I've
yeah, it's
never
whole
even heard of
universes.
before. Like I don't know anything about and like he's got like already like all these articles. It's like I want to like learn about this stuff. I want to like absorb all this knowledge and it's
Yeah,
like wow, I don't know like anything.
I mean, yeah, and like if you really want to kind of dive into a lot of that stuff without spending an entire fortune, the Mister is the way to go.
Yeah, it's I always um, grapple kind of with how I present, like piracy basically.
Mm.
But I mean, I just went to I got to present at the World Video Game Hall of Fame on.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
did a thing on ROM hacking at a symposium they had called Preserve the Games, and it's basically like how people are trying to get just straight emulation, like straight piracy, like legitimized, and it's a
Yeah,
slow grind because like the ESRB, they're just like
Nintendo.
yeah, and they're not gonna voluntarily give up any kind of power, even if they're not like using that power, at
Right.
all financially and everything. But that's like a whole other thing.
Yeah. I
But
mean, yeah, and we could keep going for hours, but yeah, it is getting a little late here.
yeah, I did want to ask like how you got between that point of like doing East Chronicles and like having that professionally handed over to someone, and from the beginning point of you studying Japanese from a book. I did want to cover that before we.
Um, I mean, initially, it was just like this, like I had this book where I taught myself vocabulary. I didn't really get a good grasp on kanji until much later, and I've forgotten so much of it at this point. Um,
How did you study that? Just like from books as well
yeah,
on your own?
lots of just like that immersion therapy kind of deal where it's just like all right, I play. I would actually one of the things where just for just general learning vocabulary and learning kanji and stuff in particular is like once you have a grasp on it, is watch watch Japanese shows with the Japanese subtitles on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a lot easier to make that connection where you see like that kanji means this, or that, pairing of kanji or whatever means this, when you also hear the word being spoken, that, and it's not strictly down to like, wait, when that's next to, when that's to the left of the compound, that it's pronounced this way, when you don't have to think about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
um and that was been, that was one of the big things, there's, just consuming as much stuff as I could, and just kind of like, just sort of, you know, I mean, like, I'm also ADHD, and like, basically the best way that I learn is brute force repetition.
Yeah, I
And
do
so
too.
that's essentially what I did. I mean, like, I did not, I didn't happen into a career with the translation stuff. It was like, all right, they bought a couple scripts of mine, and they're like, okay, well, would you like to do some more work for us? And so I did a couple more pieces of work for them. And but even by then, it's like it was like that. Like, I'm realizing that this is not my calling. It's like, working on East and Samurai Showdown. Those were very like purpose driven ideas. Like, I wanted to work on this because I want to work on these games.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can sometimes, like, I'll still do stuff like, I found like a complete script dump for Samurai Showdown 2, which has one of the most famously bad translations of the 90s. And so I just went back and I just was like, all right, let's just take this is the entire thing, all the win quotes, all the pre-fight quotes, and everything. Let's translate them properly.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's like, but as it is, that file is just sitting on my hard drive. But it was just kind of like, just something fun to do. Like, I'll figure out something to do with it somewhere. I'll put it. Maybe I'll, like, see. Maybe I'll toss it onto the cutting room floor or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and so, like, it was not really there wasn't really a sudden switch over. I just sort of kind of found myself in the position where, like, well, they bought a script from me that and it was that was part of it. It's just like, it's one thing to do fan translation when it's just, you can take as much time as you need to. It's a very
Yeah.
different thing when you're doing it on a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And because deadline pressure is not fun, and it doesn't, and under no circumstances is it ever, conducive to your best work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so that was that combination of just like, I'm not invested in this series. I'm having to, like, just kind of have to find the love to put into these characters.
Yeah.
And, like, and still, put your best effort forward and everything. But there's still that thought of like, if I were a fan of this series going into this, I would be much more excited about this, and I would be much happier that I was going to be, giving the end product would be getting my best work.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, that, when I'm doing this, like, specifically on contract, basically work to hire, it's like, this is not as much fun. Because, like, working on East and working on Samurai Shodown RPG, ultimately those were hobby projects,
Yeah.
passion projects. And doing work as, like, this is how you're going to make your bread. That's not passion. That
Yeah.
is that's necessity. And I was like, I don't think I want this to be what what I want to be, how I think about this process, the whole localization process. If I'm going to be part of it, it needs to be something that I love, that I care about.
Yeah. I would try to kind of explain that a little bit because, like not to tell like a long story, but like Street Fighter 4 brought in all these like new players that like
Mhm.
blew up the event scene, like all that stuff. And I know like streaming is like a huge thing right now. Like when I was a kid, I hated watching people watching play games. When I was a little kid, and it's like I still do. Like
Yeah,
it makes me. I just want to like play games, and I want to be like in person with people because that's just how I grew up, and
right.
that's how I still enjoy like gaming and everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would try to tell people it's like be really careful about turning your hobby into a job or trying to turn
Yeah,
your hobby into a job. It's not that you can. It's not that it won't work.
yeah.
You just got to
But it's
find
easy to
out what's
yeah,
right for you, and
it's easy
it.
to poison your love of something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, um, and I'm lucky that I was able to carve a niche. Like people would
Yeah.
always, oh, you're gonna go into video games. It's like I tried development. I hate development, and
Mm.
like I would like kill myself if I had to just make like clones of like even like
Yeah.
in indie. If I had to make like, oh, people want to play Super Metroid clones and Link to the Past clones. It's like, you know, I was like I just like couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
Like if you're,
that's a cool story because no one I think else I've really talked to has really done something like official, and then kind of been like, well, yeah, when I'm not working on something that I love, this is like not for me because I'm
yeah.
kind of like I totally understand that.
Yeah. And you gotta, yeah, like that's the thing, like when it, especially with stuff like this, like it's a lot of work. You gotta love what you do. And, you can tell the difference between, a labor of love and, and contractual obligation.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it like for when I set up stuff at events, it's like, oh, obviously people like 64. Like, I don't really enjoy like the 64 outside of like Bishop Makers and like Wonder Project J2.
Mm.
But it's like the core of it is like I'm setting up video games and people are enjoying them, and that makes it really happy. So
Yeah.
it's like it doesn't matter that I hate Mario Kart, that these people like it, and that's the core
Yeah.
of like what makes me happy.
Mm.
And that's like, I couldn't play piano, on like my channel with like, oh, I have to, because then you got to learn like songs you don't want to learn. If I'm
Right.
learning tutorials for like money,
Yeah. Slave to
or
the algorithm.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, man, like I don't want to like worry about that shit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this is super cool, man. Yeah, thank you for taking the time, and especially this is my like return to doing these things, and especially like in this video thing where we're
Yeah.
just uh just chilling for like a long set here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and you're like a fantastic guest. Like lots of great stories, lots of great insight.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
not just to the process, but just like about the games, and I think like what makes, you know, I'm always just interested in like what connects us emotionally,
Mm.
to like the games that we love, and it's just really fun talking about that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to have me back, I'd be happy to join.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's find some other stuff to talk about. I think
Yeah.
we'll have plenty.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think that's going to be too difficult.
Yeah,
But
well, cool,
yeah.
Jeff. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, and yeah, this is found in Fanslation, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
hope we're going to be doing more of them, and see you guys next time.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. Take care. And thanks for your time.
See you, Jeff.
See you, man.
Take care.